Part 45. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 441. It should be right here. An hour later, Xiaopinggan arrived at a high-end residential area in the south of the Immortal City. He stood at the entrance of a vermilion door and looked up at the house number on the wall on the side of the door, number 98, Tianyao Lane. On both sides of the surrounding alleys, there are houses about the same size as this one. This house is the Lingzi Mansion in the Immortal City. This Lingzi Mansion sounds like a haunted place, but the environment is good. Outside the yard is a snow-white height of more than 3 meters. There are also fluorite lamps on the wall and in the alley. They look very high-end, much better than the courtyard of an ordinary hotel or inn. Xiaopinggan looked around and saw that the alley was very quiet and there was no one around. He walked directly to the steps, took out the golden key and inserted it into the door lock. He turned the key and clicked. The door opened. Sure enough, it was here. The Immortal City is underground, so the vegetation in the yard here is also suitable for those strange things that grow underground. Several huge mushrooms stand in the yard. The mushrooms are more than 2 meters high. Each mushroom is like a small pavilion. There is a thick layer of moss under the mushroom, which looks a bit magical. There is a pool in the yard, and the fish in the pool are also unique to the underground world. The fish bodies are like glass, translucent, and can also shine. A group of colorful red, blue, and green fish are swimming in the water, glowing. Light, in the dark, looks pretty if you don't use dark vision. After entering the courtyard and closing the door, Xiaopinggan summoned the Fortune Boy and the Black Dragon, and asked the Fortune Boy and the Black Dragon to wander around the courtyard and the underground secret room in the room. He was relieved when he found that there was no problem. A few minutes later, Xiaopinggan stood in the yard, holding the formation plate of the Liangji mysterious ice and fire sword formation that he had made before, and buried the formation plate directly under the big mushrooms. As soon as the magic formula was activated, the entire courtyard was filled with fog, and it had been shrouded in the formation arranged by Xiaopinggan. Although the formation discs of the Tuyi mysterious ice and fire sword formations are not very powerful, they should be enough to protect the house and deal with ordinary invasions. Even a strong man from the 7 Suns realm and the 8 Suns realm wants to break this formation disc. It will also take a while, which will provide yourself with enough warning and reaction time. After burying a formation disc in the yard, Xiaopinggan breathed a sigh of relief. He felt that the yard was a little interesting. At least he no longer had to worry about it after falling asleep. Then, Xiaopinggan came to the underground secret room in the yard. The underground secret room in this yard is more than 200 square meters. The ground wall of the secret room has a layer of rock and a layer of metal armor. It looks very hard, but this is just an appearance. Xiaopinggan has not forgotten what he and Yan 11 were like back then. In Yushan City, Wei Zhongxing, the leader of the Genki gang who was fusing the world pearl in the secret room, was killed like a chicken. Xiaopinggan didn't want to be attacked like this one day when he was fusing the world pearl. It would be a tragedy. At this moment, Xiaopinggan has a Saint Master's world bead and a Forger's world bead on his body that are about to be fused. Although Xiaopinggan's heart is burning and he wants to fuse the world bead immediately, he must not be careless about the necessary preparations before the fusion. Today Liangtian's tortoise-shell 5-element inverted formation gave Xiaopinggan a lot of inspiration. Xiaopinggan thought for a moment, then took out a pile of gold coins in the secret room and began to refine the formation disc. In the dark secret room, high-temperature flames appeared. Half an hour later, the gold coin melted in the flames and gradually turned into an octagonal array embryo. Afterwards, Xiaopinggan continued to refine, and 3 golden turtles, 4 small swords, and the 5 elements arrays symbolizing gold, wood, water, fire, and earth were refined one by one. Although Xiaopinggan only has gold coins in his hand, the formation can be converted by the 5 elements. As long as there is one thing, it can be refined. The 5 elements are already. Gold can produce water, water can produce wood, wood can produce fire, fire can produce earth, and earth can produce gold. The 5 elements no shortage. Metal formation discs are stronger and easier to store, more malleable, and can withstand more formation patterns, so they are widely used. In special circumstances, if you are not picky, wood, ice, and soil can actually be used. Make array plates. Add these array devices to the formation position of the array embryo, and the array base will come out. As the formations and techniques were applied one after another, the formation base in the flames gradually changed its shape. From time to time, strange formation patterns merged into it. The formation eyes and formation gates gradually condensed. Finally, 2 days later, Xiaoping collected the magic formula, and a bagua-shaped array with introverted light fell steadily from the air on his hand. On the array, several golden turtles could be seen standing on 3 legs, each with their heads raised to the sky. The Gan position, Kan position, Li position, and Gan position of the array each have a small golden sword. It's done. Xiaoping grinned and let out a long breath. Because of the accumulated experience in refining the formation disk before, the process of refining this formation disk was extremely smooth. It was both a training exercise and a breakthrough. This formation disk, slightly stronger than Liangtian's one, it is the tortoise shell 5 elements reversed bagua sword formation, with stronger defense and stronger attack power. There is the Lianji Mazong ice and fire sword formation outside the secret room, and there is also such a formation disk inside the secret room, which is enough. Xiaoping threw out the formation disk and played a magic formula. The formation disk suddenly melted into the void. There was also a layer of light white mist around the secret room. At this moment, there seemed to be no change in the secret room, but it was already changing in the formation. Under the protection of law. After refining the formation disk for 2 consecutive days, Xiaoping's spirit was still high. He was very energetic and not tired at all. Thinking of the important boundary beads that he had to fuse next, Xiaoping drank some water in the secret room and ate. He bought something, then closed his eyes to rest for 2 hours. When his energy returned to its peak state, he opened his eyes and took out a box from the space warehouse. This box is what he got in the Zenshi Hall. The box is divided into 2 layers. The upper layer of the box contains 2 world beads. The Holy Master World Pearl is as warm as jade, with a rainbow-like light flashing inside. There is a rainbow-like light in the circle. Among them, a statue of Confucius standing with his hands crouched is looming. The caster's world bead is a deep and solemn black, with flames gushing out from the middle of the world bead. In the flames, there is the shadow of a long sword, and 3 small seal characters of Ouyuzi. After fusing the forger's world bead, you can cast long sword magic weapons. However, if you want to cast other magic weapons, you need to fuse different weapon soul world beads. To a certain extent, the weapon soul world beads fusion is more difficult. On the second level of this box is a spiritual crystal. On the spiritual crystal are the 3 characters Ouyuzi. This is the spiritual crystal of the caster. The Holy Master World Bead does not have the Divine Sense crystal. After integrating the Holy Master World Bead, whether one can obtain the evangelist position seems to be a long-term process, and it all depends on each person's ability, talent, and perception. After Xiaoping's eyes wandered around the 2 world beads, in order to be sure, he summoned Xuanhuan to guard in the secret room, and then picked up the forger's world bead and the divine thought of the forger's world bead. The crystal began to fuse with blood. Ouyuzi and Ganzhong Moxie were contemporaries, and they were both swordsmith masters. The 3 of them went to the Chu kingdom and forged the Longyuan, Taie, and Gongbu swords for the king of Chu. The reason why the forger's world pearl was Xiaoping guessed that Ouyuzi was chosen instead of Moxie, the general, because Ouyuzi was the most important successor among swordsmiths. Ouyuzi not only forged famous bronze swords such as Chunjun, Shensi, Yuqiang, and Juk, but also he made Longyuan, the first iron sword in Chinese history, and completed an epoch-making feat, leading the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. The Zanlu sword cast by Ouyuzi is even known as the best sword in the world and has become a symbol of the rise and fall of a country. The fish intestines and other swords he cast are also famous in history and are connected with many historical figures and events. Together, Xiaoping'an has never seen the Zanlu sword, but judging from the few words in the history books, the Zanlu sword was regarded as a national treasure by the Yu kingdom as soon as it was cast. Feng Menglong said in the Chronicles of the States of the Eastern Zhou dynasty that the Zanlu sword was made from the heroes of hardware. This Zanlu sword can cut iron as well as mud. It may be the first super alloy sword in history, a step further than the iron sword Longyuan. The information provided in the spiritual mind crystal introduced Ouyuzi's life, and also highlighted that Ouyuzi's metallurgy and casting skills were learned from his maternal uncle. A moment later, Xiaoping'an was surrounded by a cocoon of light. An hour later, the light cocoon shattered, and Xiaoping'an opened his eyes. In his pupils, there were two clear pale golden sword shadows slowly dissipating in the flames. This world beat gave Xiaoping'an 128 additional points of divine power. Xiaoping'an officially became a caster. There was a caster hall in the secret mandala, and the person sitting in the caster hall was none other than Ouyuzi. After calming down for a moment, Xiaoping'an picked up the Saint Master World Pearl that he had admired for a long time. Before the fusion, Xiaoping'an thought about Confucius's life and works in his head, and only after he found that nothing was missing, he started to fuse it with blood. Drowsily, Xiaoping'an opened his eyes and was startled by what he saw. In front of him was a huge and empty hall. There was a huge plaque hanging on the hall with the three characters Holy Master Hall written on it. In the open space of the hall, there were densely packed crowds of people sitting on their knees. There were 3,000 to 4,000 people. Those people, all wearing the clothes of Confucian scholars, all looked at me respectfully, as if they were studying humbly. He himself was sitting on a high platform. Behind the high platform, there were 20 granite rock pillars standing tall like Optimus pillars. Those rock pillars stood behind him, on those rock pillars. Also engraved with golden words. On the 20 huge pillars, there are exactly 20 articles from the Analects of Confucius engraved. On the tallest stone pillar behind Xiaoping'an is the first article of the Analects of Confucius learning, and first, Confucius said, "Learn and practice from time to time, isn't it the same? A friend comes from afar, not isn't it a pleasure? If a person doesn't know and is not stunned, isn't he a gentleman? Sir, please preach for us." 3,000 to 4,000 people in the hall shouted in unison, with a booming voice, and bowed to Xiaoping'an in the ancient way of teaching. Xiaoping'an looked around and finally discovered that the main hall of the Holy Master's Hall was not somewhere else, but in his secret mandala. It was a new building that appeared in the secret mandala. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 442. Chapter 442, Clearing the Name of the Saint. Looking at the crowded square in the Holy Master Hall, looking at the pious and respectful but hungry faces, Xiaoping'an seemed to have seen the scene when Confucius was giving lectures. There was silence in the Holy Master Hall, and you could hear a needle drop. Everyone's eyes were on Xiaoping'an, waiting for him to preach. Xiaoping'an's eyes looked at the first sentence on the most conspicuous giant pillar again. Isn't it easy to learn and practice it from time to time? Isn't it wonderful to have friends coming from afar? People don't know and are not surprised. Aren't you also a gentleman? This is the first sentence at the beginning of the first book of China, and it is also the first sentence that has inherited the civilization and spirit of the entire China for thousands of years. It is a pity that later generations, including those in many textbooks, have no understanding of this sentence. Is actually superficial and ridiculous, and it has caused many students and descendants of the Yan and Huang dynasties to forget the true meaning of this sentence and what the true Confucian spirit is. It has also caused many people to misunderstand Confucius. His words and thoughts denounce the sage's learning as dross. Today, I will rectify the name of the saint and the name of Chinese civilization in the Holy Master Hall, so that everyone can understand what is the true spirit of the Analects of Confucius. Xiaopinggan took a deep breath and finally spoke. As soon as he spoke on the high platform, his voice was clear and loud, spreading throughout the Holy Master Hall. The Master said, "Learn and practice from time to time, don't you mean it? What is the meaning of this sentence? If you want to understand the true meaning of this sentence, you must first understand the word shui. This study is the study of Confucians. What is a Confucian? A gentleman who aspires to become a saint is to be a Confucian. You have to be a Confucian to be a cat or a dog. If a gentleman does not have this ambition, he is not a Confucian. The Analects of Confucius is the great classic that Confucians can learn to become a saint. Sages have no learning, only gentlemen can learn. What to learn? Learn the way of saints. There are 4 interpretations of this learning. The first is hearing the Tao. If you don't hear it, you can't learn it. The second step is seeing the Tao. If you don't see it, you can't learn it. The third is to learn the way, and the fourth is to follow the example and compare. The 4 meanings of the word learn are from the shallower to the deeper. These are the 4 processes for a gentleman to learn the way of becoming a saint. Therefore, the meaning of the word learn is that a Confucian learns the way of a saint and sees it. The way of the saint, learn the way of the saint, constantly proofread the way of the saint in the real society, and then learn it. What is 11? The character 11, traditional Chinese, has feathers on the top and sun on the bottom. The sun belongs to Yang. A young bird travels around the world by riding on the energy of heaven and earth. If you don't learn the way of the sage, you can't take advantage of the righteousness of heaven and earth. Learning means getting it. The body of the holy way, the use of learning the holy way. Without learning, it is impossible to achieve learning, and without learning, it is impossible to achieve learning. Only when the whole body is of great use can it be regarded as learning and learning it. The so-called one is the way to become a saint. To learn and practice must be done at the right time, so there is learning and practicing at the same time. Time refers to the time of day, not according to the time, but according to the time, and time. According to the time, he is a villain. When he has the right time, he is a gentleman. When he has the right time, a gentleman practices the way of a saint / Therefore, isn't it also true to learn and practice it from time to time? The first sentence of the Analects of Confucius means that a gentleman hears the way of the sage, sees the way of the sage, and constantly refers to himself by the way of the sage in reality. Constantly, if the earth corrects and diligently works, it will follow the time of heaven and heaven will follow its time. You can take advantage of the righteousness of heaven and earth to travel around the world and walk in the way of a saint. In this way, it is not easy to say. It is not easy to say that this is the happiness of a gentleman. What is the study of Confucianism? As long as we are determined to learn, ordinary people can also become saints. This is Confucianism and the spirit that has been passed down by China for thousands of years. As a human being, the heart of heaven and earth is upright. As long as we are determined and learn, everyone can have the appearance of a saint. Note 1. As soon as Xiaopinggan finished explaining the first sentence of the Analects, his entire secret mandala shook. Thousands of golden lights bloomed in the sky above the entire secret mandala, shining directly on Xiaopinggan. In the golden light, all saints appearing, treasures rain from the sky, golden lotuses emerge from the earth, and the entire secret mandala is roaring. At the same time, the immortal sea, Wolong Island. True monarch Styx had just walked out of the 10,000 treasures hall with a cheerful face. Suddenly, his secret mandala shook. As if he felt something, True Lord Styx couldn't help but raise his head and look towards the sky. The originally cloudless sky, at this moment, quietly cracked open, as if a curtain had been lifted, and the mighty and majestic aura of the divine world came instantly. Within 1,000,000 miles, there was the light and shadow of a holy master standing with his hands folded. On both sides of the light and shadow, all saints are coming. Golden dragons were circling in the sky, phoenixes were flying in the sky, and the mighty aura of the gods turned into various flowers all over the sky and fell from the sky. Beautiful music was born naturally in the sky. Resounded throughout the world. True monarch Styx was stunned. His entire secret mandala began to tremble in front of the mighty aura of the divine realm. Like a drop in the ocean, he had the urge to surrender to the ground. The originally calm immortal sea boiled instantly, and countless undersea creatures, including sharks, water beasts, dragons, snakes, fish, and shrimps, jumped out of the water, boiling and leaping to devour the various golden petals scattered from the sky. 2 golden petals fell from the sky and landed on the forehead of True Monarch Styx. True Monarch Styx only felt a slight chill on his forehead and his spirits were lifted. The petals actually added 2 points of divine power to him. Giant pillars condensed from seawater rose from the sea, reaching the sky and the earth, manifesting into the appearance of the Holy Master's Hall. The golden words revealed on one of the giant pillars were the same as those on the boundary pearl, and no one could understand. Under the breath of the arrival of the god realm, golden lotuses suddenly appeared on the vast sea. The immortal sea seemed to have become the Dragon King's crystal palace, with strange and magnificent pearly lights flashing everywhere. What happened? What's going on in the sky? That's the breath of the divine world. Oh my God, could it be that the real bodies of the gods are coming to the world of god-killing insects? Suddenly, the figures of countless summoners on Wolong Island flew into the air. Everyone was dumbfounded. They had no idea why such a huge phenomenon suddenly appeared in the sky of the immortal sea. Such a phenomenon, let alone everyone seen it, never even heard of it. This is the case on Wolong Island, and the same scene is on Yun Island tens of thousands of miles away. Everyone was excited. Also at the same time, in the Holy Master's Hall in the imperial city of Shangjing, the capital of the Great Shang Kingdom, as a golden light shone down from the sky, the holy bell hanging in the Holy Master's Hall suddenly began to roar on its own. Dong, dong. As soon as the bell of the Saint Master's Palace rang, the entire upper capital city heard it. Especially for summoners, the bells in the Holy Master's temple seem to have a special magic power. Just hearing the bells can make the summoner's brains instantly clear. The bells of the Saint Master's Palace will never ring unless there is an important event. Even if Bai Tangzhao, the emperor of the Great Shang Kingdom, worships heaven at the Temple of Heaven in the imperial city, the bells of the Saint Master's Palace will only ring 12 times. But the bell kept ringing, and soon it had exceeded 12 rings. What's going on? Judicial Army Lin Yi walked out of the office of the Judicial Army camp and looked in the direction of the imperial city. When he saw the golden light falling from the sky, he looked shocked. Hua Zikan, Sidu Hua and others from the Donggang inspection office in the capital city also walked out of the office building and looked towards the imperial city in surprise. In the imperial city, as soon as the bell rang, Bai Tangzhao's figure instantly appeared in the Saint Master's Hall. The royal Saint Master of the Great Shang Kingdom who presided over the Saint Master's Hall was a white-haired and white-bearded man. The old man stood under the bell tower with a look of shock, excitement, but also confusion. His whole body was shaking, and he raised his head and looked at the big bell that was ringing under the golden light. "Sir, what's going on?" Bai Tangzhao asked. "This is, the Holy Master, the Holy Master, the real Holy Master, has appeared, the divine world has felt it, the holy bell is ringing." "What does a true Holy Master mean?" "Your Majesty, I don't know, but there is a legend among the Saint Masters. It is said that when the real Saint Master appears, he can initiate and preach for all the world beads, and the holy bell will ring by itself. The royal family of the great Shang kingdom, the holy master said, as excited as if he was about to go into shock. What? Baitang Zhao was also shocked. If there is such a holy master, doesn't it mean that as long as there are boundary beads, countless summoners can continue to advance? Such a holy master can subvert everything. There may be big changes in the divine world. Your Majesty, please prepare early. The holy bell in the Holy Master's Hall in the imperial city of Shangjing chimed 21 times, shaking the entire Shangjing city. In addition to Shangjing city, in all continents in the Yuankai world, as long as there is a Saint Master Hall, at this moment, all the holy bells are ringing. In a glorious palace in an unspeakable and mysterious space, Zhang Taizan was sitting on a throne, drinking wine, looking into the distance, and suddenly there was a smile on his face. It's not slow, you didn't let me down, continue, don't hang up when you come down, that guy is probably going crazy. Note 1, talking about Zen in Tangle, for all those who misinterpret Confucius. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 443. The surface of the immortal sea is already boiling, and visions of the divine realm suddenly appear. Within 1,000,000 miles, there is the mighty power of the divine realm. On the sea, golden lotuses bloom one after another, and in the sky, countless petals transformed by divine power sprinkling. Waves were flying everywhere on the entire sea, huge waves were surging, and the undersea creatures that jumped out of the sea were frantically devouring the petals of divine power that fell from the sky. Beautiful and ethereal music falls from the sky, everything is like a dream. Big fish leapt out from the bottom of the sea, opened their mouths, and swallowed the petals falling from the sky. For those big fish that swallowed more, the original silver fish scales gradually turned into gold. Billions of flying fish have all jumped out of the water, riding the wind on the sea and chasing petals from the sky. Even the star clams that usually sank to the deepest part of the sea surface surged up at this time, setting off huge waves on the sea surface, opening their shells like pockets on the sea surface, swallowing up those from the sea. Petals falling from the sky. This kind of joyful and lively scene has never been seen by the summoners of the immortal sea. What happened? What happened? Countless summoners flew into the sky, looking at the vision of heaven and earth and the figure of the saint revealed in the sky with shocked and confused faces. Within the entire world of god-killing insects, all the secret mandalas of summoners were trembling and resonating at this time, as if they were paying tribute and cheering for the arrival of something divine. No one knows why this happens. While the entire immortal sea was churning, at the same time, there was another scene in the underground abyss of the immortal sea. In the dark abyss, a bloody vertical eye suddenly appeared from the sky. That bloody eye carried an aura of endless madness and destruction. It was staring at the abyss. Under the gaze of that bloody eye, the entire abyss insect nest blinked. It started to boil, and countless black gas surged from the bottom of the abyss to the top. A red-robed deacon of the Xuanhuan sect was leading several black-robed disciples of the Xuanhuan sect to perform tasks in the underground abyss. The movement from the underground abyss immediately attracted their attention, and they looked at the endless. The black energy suddenly surged up from the underground abyss like a tsunami, and everyone's expressions changed drastically. The black energy gushes out from the insect nest at the bottom of the abyss. The insect nest is the most dangerous place. No one dares to go deep. They are only performing tasks near the edge of the insect nest abyss. In the sky above the abyss on the ground, the immortal city has a magnificent abyss fortress responsible for suppressing the abyss. It is also one of the headquarters of the Xuanhuan sect in the immortal city. In just the blink of an eye, the black energy quickly approached from the ground up with a rumbling sound. In the black air, endless types of zerg can be vaguely seen. Insect tide is coming. A black-robed summoner from the Seven Sun realm changed his face and suddenly screamed. Those Zerg races are crazy. Report to the Abyss Fortress immediately. After a moment, the cannons of the Abyss Fortress of the Immortal City roared angrily while overlooking the abyss, and began to pour out cannonballs one after another into the abyss below. At this height, even if a stone is thrown into the abyss, the stone will fall faster and faster under the influence of acceleration, with huge destructive power and lethality. What's more, at this moment, it is pouring vertically into the abyss. The cannonballs are heavy cannons. The cannonballs that were blasted into the abyss contained high explosives. In addition to exploding, the cannonballs also contained summoner's spells, which would bring greater lethality. The rumbling sound resounded through the abyss, and the heavy artillery shells fell towards the abyss. The speed of the shells became faster and faster the moment they left the muzzle, increasing every second, turning into streaks of flames and streams of light. The streams of light were like meteors fell from the sky one after another, and it was like divine punishment. After passing through hundreds of miles of underground abyss, the terrifying acceleration had caused the speed of the flames and streams of light to exceed 10 times the speed of sound. The entire underground abyss was inside, there was the crackle of the sound barrier. The flames and streams of light collided with the billowing black mist that surged up from the abyss. A series of explosions and fire lights were like fireworks blooming in the abyss, decorating the entire abyss with colorful colors in an instant. After combining simple strength and speed, even a stone will bring terrifying lethality once it breaks through a certain critical point. The powerful defense of the Zerg is at this moment, in front of the simplest cannon driven by gunpowder and gravity. Suddenly became vulnerable. Streams of flames and streams of light passed through the bodies of mantis bugs, magic flame bugs and various bugs in the black mist, and exploded. In the black fog of the abyss, the broken limbs of the bugs rained down towards the abyss. Falling down, the Zerg behind carried the body fragments of the Zerg in front, fearless of death, and still rushed towards the abyss fortress. Underneath the immortal sea, the fiercest war broke out without warning. In the immortal city, everything is calm at the moment. Whether it is the vision on the ground or the movement in the underground abyss, the summoners in the immortal city do not know. The summoners in the city are just wondering why their own the secret mandala will suddenly tremble. In Xiaopingan's secret mandala, Xiaopingan was completely unaware of what was happening outside. Under the gaze of the All Saints in the sky, after the shock, Xiaopingan calmed down his mind. Continue to face the disciples in the Holy Master Hall and explain the first paragraph of the first chapter of the Analects. The existence of a friend coming from afar is not existence or non-existence. It is the you that is held by Xuanhuan. It means you that there is no such thing as a widowed king. It is the same as friend. What is a friend? Comrades are friends. In oracle bone inscriptions, friends means hands juxtaposed, joining hands for a common ambition, and helping each other and cooperating with the same aspirations. Friends in this sentence also refers to other gentlemen who aspire to become saints. Penge, the ancient word for phoenix, means phoenix. When friends come from far away, there is a phoenix coming to the instrument. In Shang Shuyiji, Xiao Shaojukan, phoenix comes to the instrument is actually based on this, instrument, the law, far away, not only refers to the direction, but also refers to time, and also refers to the flow of Chinese civilization. The way of the saints does not arise out of thin air, but has a long history. Fang is not a direction, but the meaning of side, which means broad. Shang Shu Lijiang, Fang travels the world. As for the sea surface, since this is Fang, it means still, still, still. Those who come, from there to here, from far to near, are like the sun rising in the east, the tide of the sea returning, the scene of the heaven and earth rising with righteousness. The way of the sage, the great road is popular, it is far and it is square. Music is not the joy of happiness, but the joy of vocal music. The flute and the flute are 90%, the symbol of the prosperous age. To sum up the above, it is not surprising that friends come from far away. The meaning of this sentence is that gentlemen join hands for a common ambition and walk together to become a saint. They are like a phoenix among men, still, riding on the heaven and earth. The source of righteousness is far and wide, and it is vast and vast. From here to here, from far to near, like the sun rising in the east and the tide of the sea returning, it spreads the saint's way across the world and spreads it in all directions, teaching it and teaching it. When the way of a saint is manifested throughout the world, this is the image of a prosperous age created by a gentleman, and it is the joy of a gentleman. If a person does not know but is stunned, then he is not a gentleman. This sentence is the result of two sentences. This person also refers to all the living beings who cannot hear, see, learn, and practice the way of the sage. Those who know, are wise, and are wise. Meaning, people don't know, because those living beings who cannot hear, see, learn, and practice the way of the sage have no wisdom, and being angry means depression. That is, Confucius family sayings has the smoke of the south wind can solve the problems of our people. The meaning of Zai is, the one who is not depressed is to make him not depressed. The person without wisdom is, the one with wisdom is not depressed. If one does not follow the way of a sage, it is not upset. If one does the way of a sage, it is not upset. The meaning of this sentence is that both to be a true gentleman, one who practices the way of a saint should be like the smoke of the south wind to infect those who have no wisdom and do not know the way of a saint, and educate the unwise people into wise people, so that the world will not be stunned. To create a harmonious world, only in this way can one be regarded as a true gentleman and truly practice the way of a saint. This is the sacred mission of our Chinese civilization and Confucian scholars. The master said, "Isn't it just right to learn and practice from time to time? Isn't it a joy to have friends come from afar? Isn't it a gentleman if a person doesn't know and is stupefied?" This sentence has three objections, which is the spirit of the Analects of Confucius. It is also the general outline of Confucianism. Learn and practice it from time to time. Talk about heaven, and friends will come from far away. Talk about place. People don't know it and are not stunned. Talk about people. Those who are saints must sanctify their time, their place, and their people. Again, to sanctify other people, to resaint other places, to resaint other people, these three are not the same, they are the heaven, earth, and people of Confucianism. This sentence is placed in the first sentence of the first chapter of the Analects of Confucius. It is a clear and straightforward explanation of the Chinese spirit, the way of saints, the conduct of gentlemen, and the principles of Confucianism. This is why, as soon as Xiaoping finished speaking, all the saints in the sky bowed their heads at the same time. The huge pillar behind him suddenly shone brightly with golden light. The pillar suddenly turned from petrified to gold, forming a secret mandala temple. The sculptures among them all trembled all of a sudden. The three sculptures of the Xuanhuan clan, the Yushao clan, and the Shenan clan each shot out a ray of light, shining on this giant pillar. On this golden giant pillar, in addition to the text, historical sculptures of Xuanhuan, Chao, Shenan, and others gradually emerged. The brilliance of the sculptures in the temple continued to shine towards the giant pillar. A ray of skylight shone on Xiaoping's head, and Xiaoping's whole person was surrounded by a ray of light. His whole person was warm, as if he was wandering in the source of the avenue. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaoping suddenly opened his eyes. He is still in the secret room. He checked his body. Not only was there no abnormality in his body, but he was also full of energy. After undergoing powerful divine power to cleanse his marrow, it was as if he had changed into a different body. Not only that, Xiaoping suddenly discovered that there were a lot of things in his head, which were the Holy Master's secret methods of initiation. Xiaoping quickly entered his secret mandala, and the divine power in the sky caisson in the temple directly increased by 360 points. And on the first golden pillar in the Holy Master Hall in the secret mandala, there are a total of 64 additional reliefs. He just said the 32 words on the first giant pillar to rectify the name of the saint. 32 words, 64 reliefs, 1 word, and 2 reliefs, which means that at this moment, he has mastered the secret method of initiation of 64 world beads. I wonder if there is such a holy master in the Yuan Kai world. Xiaopinggan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. If others knew that he had such an ability, would they slice him up? Xiaopinggan was in a daze when he felt the ground beneath his feet shaking. He could faintly hear the roar from outside. There seemed to be some big movement in the immortal city. He quickly got up and left the secret room. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 444. Xiaopingyan walked out of the secret room and came to the yard. When he looked up, he saw in the sky above the immortal city, a creature that was hundreds of meters long, fiery red, with 2 pairs of wings, and covered in scales. The strange insect was on fire, its body was cut in half, dragging along black smoke and sprinkling blood all over the sky. Like a downed airship, it fell heavily from the sky to the ground. Beside the strange insect, several red-robed deacons of the 10,000 God sect could be faintly seen, and the halo of the summoned objects and spells in the sky was slowly dissipating. There is some unrest in the immortal city. Looking around the originally peaceful immortal city, there are 2 places in the city that are blazing with flames. From time to time, you can see the figure of the summoner flying up from the city. Xiaopingyan rubbed his eyes, his face full of surprise. What's going on here? Before he entered the secret room, the immortal city was still peaceful. Why did the immortal city seem to become chaotic in the blink of an eye? The strange insect in the sky just now, with its red body, is probably equivalent to the summoner's nether realm. Usually, such strange insects are wiped out far away from the undead city. When did these underground zergs can you actually fly to the immortal city? In the end, what happened? Under Xiaopingyan's gaze, the strange insect that fell from the sky landed in the north of the immortal city. Where the strange insect landed, countless summoners had already flown up. The strange insect fell to the ground, and the darkness there was a flash of light, and then there was a violent explosion, roar, and smoke rising into the sky from a corner of the undead city, mixed with various stone fragments and thrown out, like an ugly poisonous mushroom growing out of a corner of the city. The strange insect's body exploded the moment it hit the ground. Soon, the vibrations caused by the explosion were heard on the ground, causing ripples to appear in the water in the pool in the small courtyard where Xiaopingyan was. The small, glowing fish in the pool were scurrying around in panic. Gravel the size of a fingernail fell on the weird big mushrooms in the yard where Xiaopingyan was. Xiaopingyan shuddered. Nima, luckily that thing didn't fall in his small courtyard. If it landed here, based on the power of the explosion, his small courtyard would be destroyed in an instant, and the secret room may not be able to can bear it. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the direction of the Chancellor's Hall in the Immortal City, and rumbled throughout the city. All the inner and outer disciples of the 10,000 God sect in the Immortal City, gather at the Chief's Hall immediately. As soon as this voice came, figures all over the city immediately flew up and flew towards the headmaster hall of the Immortal City. Xiaopingyan calmed down and took out his pocket watch to check the time. There was no sun or moon underground, but the time on the pocket watch told him that it took him almost 3 days to fuse the Saint Master World Pearl this time. Something big must have happened in the Immortal City in these 3 days. Xiaopingyan said in his heart. He did not go immediately, but immediately transferred to the underground secret room, put away the Xuanhuan in the underground secret room at once. After thinking about it, even the turtle shell 5 elements upside down bag with sword formation that he had just refined the formation discs were also put away. Then Xiaopingyan came to the yard outside, suddenly jumped into the air, and flew towards the direction of the director's hall. Just after flying less than 1,000 meters, a voice came from the sky, "Brother Dragon." Xiaopingyan took a look and saw that it was Feng Liu, Lianyuzhu, and the 5th, 7th and 8th children of Yundao Jizi. Those 5 people were also in the sky. When they saw Xiaopingan, they moved directly towards Xiaopingan. Peace flew over. Brother Long, are you okay? Feng Liu asked with concern as soon as he flew over. I'm fine, Xiaopingan shook his head. Brother Feng, what happened to this immortal city? Why did it suddenly become so chaotic? Did Brother Long not be in the immortal city these 2 days? Feng Liu asked strangely. Yes, it's just that I have been practicing and studying formations and integrating the world beads in the secret room for the past 2 days. Today I felt such a big movement outside, and I just came out of the secret room. That's it. Feng Liu and others did not doubt what Xiaopingan said, because for high-level summoners, in order to study secret techniques, 10 days and a half, or even 3 to 5 months are too ordinary, or even they have been there for 10 or 8 years. Xiaopingan is just in seclusion for a few days, which is nothing. Big things have happened in the entire world of god-killing insects in the past few days. I heard that a real Saint Master has appeared in the world of god-killing insects. Lian Yuzhi next to him had his eyes fixed on Xiaopingan from the moment he flew over, showing concern. The emotion was beyond words. When Xiaopingan asked, Lian Yuzhi replied. Feng Liu and others next to him just glanced at Lian Yuzhi and did not speak. Xiaopingan looked confused. Ah, what is a real Saint Master? Brother Long, did you feel your secret mandala suddenly vibrating a few days ago? I feel it. What's wrong? Xiaopingan replied casually. Lian Yuzhi then told Xiaopingan a series of changes that had occurred above the immortal sea and in the underground abyss of the immortal city in the past few days. I won't talk about the things above the immortal city, but in the abyss underground of the immortal city, in just a few days, the Zerg almost came out in full force and rushed towards the abyss fortress. The hidden Zerg caves everywhere in the underground came out. Launched a crazy attack on all summoners. Except for the underground insect nests in the Undying City, almost all the insects in the insect nests in the entire god-killing insect world went crazy and began to pour out of the insect nests crazily, turning the entire god-killing insect world upside down. The war underground in the immortal city began without warning. But it's not just the undead city that's in chaos, but the entire world of god-killing insects. The explosive fire insect that was killed by several red-robed deacons of the 10,000 God sect just now emerged from the underground gap without knowing it, and rushed directly to the immortal city, causing chaos in the immortal city. Various news has been spreading wildly in the Sea of Immortals these past 2 days. Everyone seems to know that this mutation seems to be related to the Holy Master, but no one knows what is going on. What is the real Holy Master like? You know, it's just that all kinds of news are flying all over the sky, and everyone is spreading the word that the real Saint Master has completely understood the secrets of the Saint Master's world beads, and can give initiation and preaching to all world beads, and allow people to integrate all world beads. This is something that has never happened before. This news made the summoners go crazy. Hearing these changes, Xiaopingan had a look of surprise on his face, but his heart was in turmoil, because Xiaopingan had already felt that the changes in the immortal sea and the underground Zerg abyss might be related to the Holy Master world pearl he had fused. I am not yet able to initiate all the world beads. I don't have many world beads that I have fused. There are only 64 that I can initiate now. I just fused a Holy Master world pearl. Why was there such a big movement? Xiaopingan secretly took a breath of air. If people knew that he was responsible for this movement, he would probably have to change his identity and run away, otherwise he would be sliced into pieces. Brother Long, several of our brothers from the 9 sons of Yundao have returned to Yundao to see what's going on outside. We were originally planning to hunt underground for a while to get some boundary beads, but now it's hard to stay in this undead city. Those Zerg races are crazy. We are going to leave here and return to the ground, and we came here to say goodbye to you. Feng Liu said directly to Xiaopingan. I have been so obsessed with practicing these past few days that I have forgotten to refine the Horcruxes for Brother Feng and others. Xiaopingan said embarrassedly. Ha ha ha, there's no rush, there's a long way to go. Besides, even if you can refine the Horcrux now, we are not ready. The soul is not strong enough to separate the soul. Let's wait until we have the opportunity in the future. Okay, let's wait until the future. In this way, we will meet again later. By the way, third sister, do you have anything to say to Brother Long? We will wait for you over there. After Feng Liu finished speaking, he gave the messenger to Lao Wu, Lao Qi, and Lao Ba. With a wink, several people said goodbye to Xiaopingan and flew away directly into the distance. Xiaopingan looked at Lianyuzhu. Miss Lian, do you have something to tell me? Lianyuzhu bit her lip, and suddenly looked directly into Xiaopingan's eyes, her eyes fiery, and she mustered up her courage. I have you in my heart, but I wonder if you have me in your heart. Damn it, how could a beautiful woman like me look like this? Xiaopingan scratched Zhu's head and didn't know the answer. Okay, you don't need to say it, I already know it. Lianyuzhu suddenly smiled and seemed to have returned to her sharp appearance. She took out the gold coin with Xiaopingan's fingerprint and waved it in front of Xiaopingan. I was joking with you just now. I originally wanted to make an appointment for you to refine a Horcrux for me. Your sect has something to do, so let's talk about it later. Take care of yourself. After saying this, Lianyuzhu turned around and flew away without looking back. Watching the Lianyuzhu fly away, Xiaopingan took a deep breath and flew directly in the direction of the director's hall. In a short time, Xiaopingan flew to the chief's hall. In the square outside the director's hall, as far as you can see, there are disciples of Wanchen sect everywhere. A row of red-robed deacons stood solemnly at the door of the deacon hall with their hands behind their backs. All the entry-level disciples who came here came to stand in front of their respective leading deacons, and the outer disciples all stood in the square. Xiaopingan also saw Liang Tian. In front of Liang Tian, there were dozens of official disciples of Wanchen sect wearing white robes and a few wearing black robes. Liang Tian also saw Xiaopingan and waved to Xiaopingan. Xiaopingan's mage robe attracted a lot of attention when he arrived. Many people's eyes in the crowd fell on him. Xiaopingan seemed to feel that those eyes seemed to say that this person was the soul who had just joined the Wanchen section division. Liang Deacon. Xiaopingan flew directly in front of Liang Tian without squinting his eyes. Why are you here so late? Liang Tian frowned slightly and looked at Xiaopingan from head to toe. I just said goodbye to some friends. Well, are the two world beads fused? Integrated, Xiaopingan nodded. How is the fusion of the Holy Master's world beads? Have you mastered any method of the world pearls initiation? Xiaopingan's heart skipped a beat, but his expression was filled with shame. I have fused the Saint Master world pearl, but I haven't yet understood the secrets of the Saint Master Hall, so I haven't mastered the secret method of the initiation of any world pearl yet. It doesn't matter, the Saint Master Realm Pearl is slowly comprehended after fusion. If you fuse it little by little, you may gain something in the future. Liang Tian had a natural look on his face. This is how most people fuse the Saint Master World Pearl. Real Saint Masters are those who are extremely talented and grind them out little by little after fusing the World Pearl. If he were to be beaten to death, he would not even think of this. The person in front of him was the one who shocked the entire world of god-killing insects and Yuan Kaiu in the past few days. No one knows what the so-called true Saint Master is like. Most people imagine a true Saint Master to be like a peerless powerful man who may become a god at any time for 10,000 years. They never imagine a real Saint Master. There was a bald man in front of him who looked a little rough just after entering the Nether Realm. That's what Liang Deacon said. After Xiaopingan said this, he wanted to shrink to the back of the team. Just stand here, Liang Tian pointed to the position next to him. Xiaopingan could only stand expressionlessly next to Liang Tian. using the back of his head to feel the eyes of countless people around him falling on him. Fortunately, those eyes were not very hostile, and some were just inquisitive. Xiaopingyan glanced at them casually, and many of his eyes were somewhat flattering. The person standing next to Deacon Liangtian is the new soul master who joined the Wanchen sect. It seems so. You see the black and gold pattern on the cuffs. What's that person's name? It seems to be called Dragon Fantasy. I heard that the refined soul weapon is very powerful. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 445. Xiaopingyan's ears were very sensitive. Although he was standing, the whispers from the crowd around him still reached his ears. This kind of occasion was rare, and almost all the important figures in the immortal city appeared one by one. Ah, I didn't expect Master Firecrow to be here too. Master Firecrow is here. There was a commotion in the crowd at the door of the director's hall. When Xiaopingyan turned around, he saw Deacon Ling accompanied by an old man wearing a black mage robe from the Wanchen sect with gold patterns on the black robe. He flew over and stood in front of the team. The old man had a horse face and a bit of goat's beard. He seemed to be well kept and looked pampered. He just raised his face slightly and raised his nostrils, looking arrogant. The black mage robe symbolizes the cultivation of the seven sun realm in the Wanchen section. Looking at the commotion caused by the old man, you can imagine that the old man's reputation in the immortal city was definitely the number one figure. No wonder it caused the commotion. Xiaopingyan remembered going to see Master Firecrow before. Summoners queuing up outside Master Firecrow's shop to refine Horcruxes. The quotas were all arranged for 4 to 5 years. It was really an exaggeration. Master Firecrow's reputation in the immortal city is much greater than that of Xiaopingyan. I didn't expect Master Firecrow to also join the 10,000 Gods sect. There were exclamations from around him. Of course, as long as the price is right, who can refuse it? I heard that the 10,000 Gods sect promised Master Firecrow the divine spring to advance to the realm of transformation. Not many people can get that divine spring. No wonder. Listening to the sounds around him, Xiaopingyan also had some thoughts. Master Firecrow was originally refining soul weapons in the immortal city, and was indirectly serving the Wanchen section. The Wanchen sect was so eager to recruit soul masters that it promised something like this. The benefits are probably not just as simple as wanting a soul master to help the Wanchen sect refine soul weapons. Xiaopingyan glanced at Liangtian. What Liangtian said to him last time seemed to have some hints. It seems that I need to pay more attention. Maybe there is something dangerous waiting for me behind this. Xiaopingyan was thinking in his head when he felt a piercing gaze falling directly on his face. He turned his head and saw that the Firecrow master was turning his head to stare at him, his brows slightly raised and his mouth tightly pursed. He looked at him, his eyes a little unkind, and seemed a little hostile. Damn it, when did I ever offend him, and I didn't owe him any money, or dig up his family's ancestral graves, why do you look like this? With this thought in his mind, Xiaopingyan also stared back. The Firecrow master raised the corner of his mouth, showing a sneer, turned his head, and whispered something to Deacon Ling next to him. The deacon turned his head and glanced at Xiaopingyan, and nodded slightly, as if he was confirming Xiaopingyan's identity with Master Huoya and Huoya. At this moment, Xiaopingyan heard a message from Deacon Liang. Deacon Liang didn't turn his head, but he seemed to have sensed something. The man over there wearing a black robe with gold cuffs is Master Firecrow from the Immortal City. You should pay more attention in the future, that person may not be very friendly to you. Why, I didn't blame him, Xiaopingyan asked in a depressed voice message. Enemies in the same profession have never heard of the saying. You have already offended yourself, maybe you just didn't realize it. When? The 3 Horcruxes I gave you last time, the better one was refined by Master Firecrow. The Horcrux you refined for Guoqing, Guoqing took it out to show off, saying it was a fire match. Master Crow has refined it well, and the soul power incorporated into the Horcrux is more abundant. Master Fire Crow heard this and felt that you stole his limelight. Isn't this an offense? Holy shit. Xiaoping'an was depressed. Compared with the soul weapons refined by other soul masters, Master Fire Crow's soul weapon should be slightly better. But in his own eyes, Master Fire Crow's soul weapon was as refined as shit. He was already so low-key. I pinched my nose and used my strength to show off a little bit, but I didn't expect that I would still be jealous of others and become the enemy of others. This is an unreasonable disaster. By the way, what's the name of the red-robed deacon next to Master Fire Crow? That's Deacon Ling, his name is Ling Wuju. Deacon Ling and I don't have much to deal with. I'm your commanding deacon now. Be careful of Deacon Ling making trouble for you. Good deacon, what you are telling me is considered a secret among the deacons of the Immortal City. Liang Tian turned his head and glanced at Xiaoping'an, and said lightly, this is not a secret. He and I have different personalities, so we just can't get along. Besides, there is competition among deacons, and the people above are also. If you want to see this kind of competition and get ahead in the Wanchen sect, it's not that easy. Xiaoping'an nodded. In addition to Master Fire Crow, there were two other soul masters. Xiaoping'an also saw that the other two soul masters, like him, were wearing white robes with gold patterns on the cuffs, and each stood with a red-robed deacon. Next to him, the two soul masters were less obviously hostile towards Xiaoping'an than Master Fire Crow. They turned their heads when they saw Xiaoping'an's eyes, and each nodded towards Xiaoping'an. Those two soul masters, the one with white temples and elegant temperament is named Feng Yu, and the one with black face is named Luo Yundi. They are both newly recruited soul masters from Wanchen sect. Liang Tian's voice came. Ahem, good deacon, why don't you tell me quietly, what exactly does the Wanchen sect want to do in its sudden rush to recruit soul masters? Isn't it just for a few soul weapons? Why do I feel a little guilty? Xiaoping'an said with a salivated face. Asked. Liang Tian glanced at Xiaoping'an lightly, 5 Horcruxes. What? Xiaoping'an thought he heard wrongly. You refine 5 Horcruxes for me, and I'll tell you why. Liang Tian asked for bribes so straightforwardly that Xiaoping'an felt uncomfortable. Don't look at me like that, those Horcruxes are useful to me too. I can still use the Horcrux to do other things even if I don't need it. You don't think I don't eat fireworks even though I'm a red-robed mage? Xiaoping'an gritted his teeth and said, okay, let's make it a deal. As long as you ask someone to come over, Deacon Liang, I will refine 5 Horcruxes for you. That's okay. Can. Then Deacon Liang, can you tell me the reason why Wanchen sect recruits soul masters? Isn't it because they want to sell us out? Liang Tian shrugged lightly and said lightly, we'll wait until the 5 Horcruxes are refined. Depend on. None of these guys are fuel efficient. After just a short wait, 3 chiefs wearing blue mage robes walked out of the chief hall. Chief Fu, whom Xiaoping'an had met before, walked among the 3 chiefs with a solemn look on his face. Seeing Director Fu appear, the sounds outside the director's hall suddenly stopped. Manager Fu's majestic gaze swept across the audience. In the past few days, changes have occurred in the god-killing insect world. Everyone knows that the abyss insects are restless and the insect tide is coming. Our 10,000 god sects Immortal City and Abyss Fortress are the first to bear the brunt. Today there are more. The exploding flame insects in the nether realm broke through the outer defense line of the undead city and attacked the undead city. The situation the undead city is facing now has become extremely serious. This undead city and the Abyss Fortress are the foundations that my Wanchen sect has worked hard to create. We must not give up easily. It is now announced that the entire Immortal City will enter wartime from now on, and the Wanchen sect and the Abyss Zerg underground in the Immortal City will fight to the death. Manager Fu's voice spread throughout the Immortal City. Some people were excited, while others were frightened. Xiaoping'an didn't feel much after hearing this. In history, too many people have said this. He knows that the so-called deadly battle is just the attitude of the Xuanhuan section when the benefits are greater than the costs. The attitude of the Xuanhuan sect is determined. And once the situation is completely reversed and nothing can be done, it is just an immortal city. The Xuanhuan sect will give up if it says to give up. It is impossible to invest endlessly in a gamble where the cost is less than the return. From now on, all entry disciples must obey orders. Outer disciples who are afraid can leave now, but if they leave at this time, they will never be allowed to step into the territory of Xuanhuan sect in the future. For the remaining outer disciples, Xuanhuan sect will, in addition to the previously promised rewards, there will also be various rare world beads and horcruxes as rewards depending on their performance. The insect swarm in front of us is not only a crisis, but also an opportunity for us to hone and improve ourselves. Manager Fu said a lot of words, followed by a direct announcement that the Immortal City would send a large group of summoners, under the leadership of a manager, to support the Abyss Fortress. At the same time, the city began to actively prepare for war, arranging small teams to patrol and consolidate the defense line outside the city to hunt down the Zerg. Be prepared for a big war. In order to motivate the outer disciples, after speaking, Director Fu directly named those who had performed well recently and rewarded those outer disciples with 10 horcruxes, which immediately caused a sensation among the outer disciples. After Manager Fu finished speaking, Liang Tian took Xiaoping'an directly into the manager's hall and came to Manager Fu's office. Master Fire Crow, Feng Yu, and Luo Yundi also came together, accompanied by their leading deacons. The 4 soul masters of the Immortal City officially met here for the first time. The 4 masters are now the soul masters in my Immortal City, and they can also be regarded as the elite among the disciples. The Immortal City is now facing a crisis, and is in urgent need of soul weapons to kill enemies and boost the morale of the 10,000 God section in the future. You may have to work hard. Come on. Manager Fu's eyes swept across the faces of the 4 people. Ahem, since we have joined the Xuanhuan sect, we will naturally be both prosperous and disadvantaged. At this time, it is natural for us to do things for the Xuanhuan section. There is no need to be polite, Manager Fu. We will do our best. Before Xiaoping'an, one of the 4 soul masters, could speak, Master Fire Crow had already expressed his position on behalf of everyone. Judging from his appearance, he seemed to regard himself as the boss among the 4 soul masters. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Xiaoping and glanced at him. Xiaoping'an remained silent. Very good, Master Fire Crow can say that. I feel relieved. Manager Fu smiled slightly. I discussed with several managers and prepared to set up a Horcrux Hall in the Immortal City. This Horcrux Hall is responsible for refining Horcrux. Of course, we will also provide necessary resources for the Horcrux Hall. I am going to appoint Master Longhuan as the leader of the Horcrux Hall. What do you think? When the Fire Crow Master heard about the Horcrux Hall, his face lit up and a smile appeared on his lips. When he heard that Director Fu was about to appoint Xiaoping'an as the leader of the Horcrux Hall, his face suddenly turned red. The fists are clenched. I object. Master Fire Crow jumped out immediately. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 446. I also object, and I ask Manager Fu to take back his life. Xiaoping'an saluted to Manager Fu and said directly. Everyone in the room was stunned. Everyone could see that Master Fire Crow was not convinced by Xiaoping'an. It was natural for Master Fire Crow to object to this appointment, but why did Xiaoping'an himself object? Even Master Fire Crow himself was stunned. Master Fire Crow originally had a lot of words in his stomach that he wanted to say out, but he didn't expect that Xiaoping'an himself was opposed to this suggestion. Those words that had not been said yet were choked in his throat. Inside, he stared at Xiaopingan with doubts in his eyes, wondering what kind of trick Xiaopingan was playing. Master Longhuan, what are you talking about? Don't you want to be the leader of this Horcrux Hall? Director Fu frowned slightly, looked at Xiaopingan and asked, this position is not an arbitrary appointment, but the head of the hall. Judgment based on the level of the Horcruxes refined by several masters before. Master Qi, I think Master Fire Crow is more suitable for this position, Xiaopingan replied politely. Master Fire Crow has been in the Immortal City for many years, and he should have refined many Horcruxes for the summoners of the Immortal City. Everyone in the Immortal City knows that hard work is a great achievement, and Master Fire Crow's cultivation has reached the Nether Realm, far above us. Master Fire Crow's appointment as the leader of the Soul Weapon Hall will be more convincing. I practiced before when making soul weapons. I mainly rely on external force, with the help of a top-quality soul-fixing pearl. As Xiaopingan spoke, he directly took out his top-quality soul-fixing pearl and showed it in front of everyone. As soon as the soul-fixing pearl was taken out, the whole room began to ripple with blue light waves, and everyone's minds were filled with excitement. Tranquility, with a different kind of calm aura, several soul masters opened their eyes wide and looked at the soul-fixing pearl in Xiaopingan's hand. This kind of soul-fixing pearl is a rare treasure for soul masters. After letting everyone take a look, Xiaopingan put away the soul-fixing pearl with a humble face. Because of the blessing of this top-quality soul-fixing pearl, I have a slight advantage in the wind soul technique and can refine it. You have to get a Horcrux, but when it comes to refining Horcruxes, I think Master Fire Crow should be better, so I recommend Master Fire Crow to be the leader of the Horcrux Hall. Xiaopingan showed his skills in refining Horcruxes before because he wanted to gain a firm foothold in the Wanchen sect so that others would not look down upon him. But if he was to be the leader of the Horcrux Hall and stand in such a conspicuous place all of a sudden, Xiaopingan would ping and wouldn't do it. Others don't know, but the Blood Demon cult and the Dream Demon should know that the so-called soul refining method of the Dream Spirit cult is actually a secret technique from the spiritual world. At this moment, the Blood Demon cult is still chasing them all over the world. As a newcomer who had just entered the world of god-killing insects, and suddenly used the soul refining method to stand in such a prominent position in the 10,000 Gods sect, wasn't this a clear sign that the Blood Demon sect would come to trouble him? Therefore, after Xiaopingan thought about it, at this time, he wisely chose not to stand up. The Fire Crow Master didn't expect Xiaopingan to say such words and be so sensible. Looking at Xiaopingan's eyes, he couldn't help being surprised. He was no longer in the completely hostile state before. Manager Fu was also greatly surprised. He pondered for a moment and then looked at Feng Yu. What do you think, Master Feng Yu? Feng Yu smiled slightly, as if he was staying out of the matter. I have just joined the 10,000 Gods sect, and everything will be arranged by Director Fu. Where is Master Luo Yundi? The black-faced Luo Yundi looked at Xiaopingan and Master Fire Crow, but he didn't mean to argue. I ask myself that my ability to refine Horcruxes is still a little behind Master Fire Crow. I hope that in the future I will be in the Horcrux Hall you can continue to improve. In Luo Yundi's heart, he also somewhat disapproved of Xiaopingan's position as the leader of the Horcrux Hall. There was only one reason. Hall Master, doesn't that make them even more incompetent? If Master Fire Crow serves as the Hall Master, there will be 3 Soul Masters who are in the current state under the Hall Master, which will look much better. After Master Fu took a deep look at Xiaopingan, he thought for a moment and followed the trend. In this case, everyone has the same opinion. Then I will announce on behalf of the Master Hall that Master Fire Crow will serve as the head of the Horcrux Hall of the Immortal City. The leader of the hall, Master Fire Crow, please take the seal, Manager Fu said, moved his hand, took out a gold seal, and solemnly handed it to Master Fire Crow. Master Fire Crow looked happy, took 2 steps back, straightened his clothes, bowed, took the golden seal with both hands, raised the golden seal above his head, and then put it away. This golden seal is more of a symbolic meaning for a position. The Horcrux Hall is located on the 13th floor of the Director's Hall. You can go and take a look later. The situation in the Immortal City is serious at the moment. The Horcrux Hall must shoulder its responsibilities and boost the morale of the Immortal City. Let all the disciples understand that our Immortal City is very powerful, so you masters should work harder. In the past month, I hope that the Horcrux Hall can provide 20 Horcruxes. Is there any problem? Master Huoyai had just assumed the role of the leader of the Horcrux Hall, and it was time to show off. He would decline and immediately said impassionedly, "Please rest assured, Manager Fu, within a month, the Horcrux Hall will definitely be able to provide services to the Immortal City. 20 Horcruxes. 20 soul weapons are divided equally, and a soul master has to refine 5 pieces a month. For Master Huakro and others, this workload is indeed a bit heavy, but it is not impossible to complete. It is like working overtime, but it is just a little bit. Boiling people will even consume and damage a little soul. From today on, the red-robed deacons will still be the commanding deacons of the masters. However, the task of refining Horcruxes will be assigned by the Horcrux Hall. Other tasks will still be the responsibility of the commanding deacons. Well, if there is nothing else, everyone can leave first. Master Firecrow will stay first," Manager Fu spoke. Xiaopingan followed the others and left Director Fu's office. On the way out, Xiaopingan heard the message from Master Firecrow, "Everyone, go to the Horcrux Hall on the 13th floor and wait for me." It wasn't until he walked out of the office that Liang winked, pulled Xiaopingan aside, and cut off the conversation between the two with a wave of his hand. "Why did you reject the position of the leader of the Horcrux Hall just now? If you just want to fight for it, Master Fu, in the end, we must let both of you refine the Horcruxes at the same time to judge. Let your ability speak for itself. With your ability, you should be slightly better than Master Firecrow." Liang Tian wanted to say this in the office just now, but in front of Manager Fu at that time, it would be too unruly for him to transmit the message, so he has endured it until now. "Ahem, good deacon, my abilities are limited. I think Master Firecrow is more suitable for this position," Xiaopingan smiled. The position of the leader of the Horcrux Hall is not as simple as just refining a few Horcruxes. It has access to many things. It is an opportunity to get in touch with the upper echelons of the 10,000 gods section. It is such a pity that you gave up like this. Deacon Liangtian shook his head. "Ahem, let's wait until I advance to the Nether Realm." Xiaopingan spread his hands. As for contacting anyone who is not a high-level person, Xiaopingan didn't take it seriously. He was ordered to be hunted down by the demigods and the dominant demon. This should be regarded as contact with the upper-level people. No matter how much contact with the upper-level people of the 10,000 gods sect, they will not exceed demigod level. Liang Tian nodded, "Okay, then don't forget our agreement. I will find someone to come to you in 2 days. Will you take the time to help me refine the first Horcrux?" "Liang Deacon, why do I feel like I've fallen into a trap?" Xiaopingan smiled bitterly. Liang Tian looked at Xiaopingan with a half-smile. "Why, do you want to regret it? If you want to regret it, you can do it in time." Xiaopingan laughed, "Ha ha ha, just kidding, even if I delay the affairs of the Horcrux Hall, I can't delay your affairs, good deacon. We can't delay matters in the Horcrux Hall. I can't bear this crime. If you can, please do the hard work." "I know you can do it." Liang Tian smiled and patted Xiaopingan on the shoulder, and then left. Watching Liang Tian leave, Xiaopingan touched his nose, turned around and went downstairs, heading towards the 13th floor of the Director's Hall. On the 13th floor of the Director's Hall, there is indeed a Horcrux Hall. The sign of the Horcrux Hall with gold characters on a black background is hung directly opposite the stairway on the 13th floor. Standing at the door of the Horcrux Hall are 2 summoned armored guards. It seems to have a somewhat majestic meaning. Horcrux Hall. As soon as you enter the hall, there is a screen wall. In front of the screen wall, there is also a summoned beauty in ancient costume standing there to receive you. Welcome Master Dragon Fantasy to return to the Horcrux Hall. The summoned beauty in ancient costume smiled and saluted Xiaoping'an. Damn it, the IQs of these summoned characters are so high that they can actually recognize their own identities. There is a hall in the Horcrux Hall, and there are different secret rooms connected outside the hall. Judging from the layout here, it seems that you can help people refine Horcruxes directly here. Xiaoping'an entered the Horcrux Hall and saw that Fenyu and Luoyundi had arrived, and they were chatting in the hall of the Horcrux Hall. Master Fenyu, Master Luoyundi, I have admired them for a long time. Xiaoping'an smiled and held his hands as soon as he entered. Fenyu and Luoyundi also stood up. Master Longhuan, I have admired you for a long time. As soon as the three people met, they all greeted each other politely for a long time. Just after they got to know each other politely, Master Fire Crow came back. Master Fire Crow had a happy face. As soon as he entered the hall, he took the main seat unceremoniously. Then he looked around and said, "Everyone, even if we officially know each other today, there is no need to be polite anymore. Just now, Manager Fu left me here. After chatting with me for a while, the world of god-killing insects is now in chaos. The demand for Horcruxes from the Wanshen sect has greatly increased. The burden on our Horcrux Hall is not light. Within this month, there will be 20 Horcruxes, 5 for each of us. 1 Horcrux every 6 days on average, is that okay?" Hall Master, of course there is no problem in refining Horcruxes, but our refining Horcruxes will also consume souls. Such high-intensity refining may not last long, Fenyu said. The sect has already considered this issue. Master Fire Crow said, and with a movement of his hand, he took out 3 white jade bottles. With a wave of his hand, he actually summoned 3 beautiful maids who filled a handful of them. The 3 maids each came to Xiaoping'an and the others with a bottle, handed the bottle to the 3 of them, and then stepped aside. What is in this bottle is the Balu renewing pill refined by the Wanshan section. It is more effective than the soul strengthening pill. This pill can replenish everyone's soul consumption. From now on, everyone will have 1 bottle every month. Let's prepare it. We need your efforts. Master Fire Crow said, his eyes turned to Xiaoping'an, and he continued to pretend with a proud look on his face, "I heard that Master Longhuan has just mastered the method of refining soul weapons, and he will continue to do so in the future. After training, a true soul master will rely less and less on soul-fixing pearls after he becomes stronger. He always relies on soul-fixing pearls to refine soul weapons. It is difficult to improve his skills." Xiaoping'an smiled. What the Hall Master said is that I will ask the Hall Master for more guidance in the future. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 447. 10 days later, the secret room of the Horcrux Hall. Xiaoping'an opened his eyes and stretched out his hand. The soul-fixing pearl fell gently on Xiaoping'an's hand like a feather. Xiaoping'an put away the soul-fixing pearl, stretched out his fingers, and touched the faint blue cocoon of light opposite. With one click, the light cocoon shattered. Inside the light cocoon, sitting cross-legged was an outer disciple of the Wanshan sect who wore an eye patch and had only one eye. He looked a bit ferocious. The outer disciple was wearing a goose-yellow mage robe with leather armor, holding a jagged sharp weapon that glowed with a layer of red light. At the same time as the light cocoon was shattered, the outer disciple suddenly opened his only eye and looked at the weapon in his hand first, with a look of surprise on his face. "Thank you, Master Longhuan." The outer disciple immediately put away the Horcrux in his hand, stood up, and saluted Xiaoping'an, then grinned and waved the jagged weapon with his hand, making it appear that extremely satisfied. "This time, I feel that this soul-breaking saw will definitely be able to break through the armor of the mantis. This Horcrux has just been refined. You'd better cultivate it for more than 3 days. It will be more comfortable to use, Xiaoping'an said in a pretending to be weak voice, then took out the Baler renewing pill and knocked one again. Pill. Master, my name is Ming Tao. I will return to the Abyss Fortress in a few days. If you have anything to do in the future, Master, feel free to come to me. The outer disciple said boldly. In the eyes of summoners, the profession of Soul Master is the same as that of doctors in the eyes of ordinary people. They are people worth making friends with, so this big man is particularly polite. By the way, how are the battlefields at the Abyss Fortress these days? Xiaoping'an asked. It's very intense. The heavy artillery of the fortress still blocks the main passages and spaces of the abyss, but there are also some bugs that are very smart and will come around. Our task in the Abyss Fortress is to kill those bugs and block their passages and blow them up. If you lose, just retreat to the big formation of the Abyss. The Abyss Fortress will be fine for a short time, but it will be difficult to say as time goes by. Ming Tao said. Xiaoping'an nodded. It seems that the immortal city will not fall in a short time. Then you should be more careful. Haha, don't worry, with a few more mantis worms, I can get 200 insect crystals, Ming Tao said, and with a move of his hand, an extra boundary bead appeared in his hand, and he handed it to Xiaoping'an. Master, you have worked hard these past 2 days. This is a divine power world bead that I obtained in the abyss a few days ago. It is not a sign of respect, so please don't refuse, Master. You're welcome, you're welcome. Refining a Horcrux for you is a reward given to you by the Xuanhuan sect, and it is also my mission. How can I ask for your things? Xiaoping'an declined quickly, seriously. Ha ha ha, the sect is a sect, and we are us. We all have our own affairs. If Master doesn't accept it, then he is looking down on me. Well, thank you very much. Xiaoping'an could only accept the divine power world bead. The two looked at each other and laughed. Xiaoping'an opened the secret room and sent Ming Tao out. When he walked to the hall, he happened to meet Master Firecrow walking from the side aisle with his hands behind his back. I've met the hall master. I've met Master Firecrow. Both of them saluted Master Firecrow. In the past few days, Master Firecrow has become more popular in the Immortal City after becoming the master of the Soul Weapon Hall. Many people said that Master Firecrow is the #1 Soul Master in the Immortal City. The disciples of the Xuanhuan sect who refine soul weapons in the Weapon Hall, the first thing they think of when they come here is Master Firecrow. As for Longhuan, Fengyu, and Luo Yundi, Master Firecrow divided the remaining talents among them. Different people come to refine soul weapons. The stronger the soul is, the easier it is to separate the soul. For soul masters, there are still some differences here. Have you finished refining the Horcrux? Master Firecrow asked Ming Tao kindly, and then looked at Xiaoping'an's tired face, feeling extremely satisfied. Thank you Master Longhuan, the Horcrux has been refined, Ming Tao said. Oh, let's see how it goes. Without thinking much, Ming Tao took out the Horcrux he had just refined and handed it to Master Firecrow. Master Firecrow took the Horcrux and inspected it carefully. He breathed a sigh of relief again. Compared with the Horcrux he refined, this Horcrux contained a little less soul divided into the Horcrux. It was just the Horcrux. The distribution of the souls among the guards was more even. Considering the effect of the top-quality soul-fixing pearl in Longhuan's hand, the Horcrux refined by Longhuan did not overshadow the Horcrux he refined. This is already the 5th Horcrux that Longhuan has refined in the Horcrux Hall in the past few days. The level of each Horcrux is almost the same, slightly inferior to his. It is not beyond his expectation. The last time Longhuan refined it, the reason why the Eagle Strike crossbow he made was better than the one he refined himself was probably because this dragon fantasy wanted to show off and put some of his own soul into it. For a soul master, that kind of thing is a loss-making business. It's okay to do it once or twice occasionally, but it's definitely not okay to do it 4 or 5 times a month. No one can bear it. Yes, yes, Master Longhuan has carefully refined this Horcrux. There is no problem with this Horcrux. Master Huoyao said nice words before returning the Horcrux to Mingtao. Mingtao was also very happy. Happy, he put away his Horcrux and left. Hall Master, this month's task of refining the Horcrux has been completed. I have been a bit exhausted these days. If there is nothing else, I will return to my residence to cultivate for a while, and then return to the Horcrux Hall when the task comes next month. Xiaoping'an said to Master Fire Crow. Master Fire Crow showed a rare smile to Xiaoping'an, and his voice became much kinder. Well, everyone has worked hard these days. Our Horcrux Hall has completed the task assigned by Director Fu ahead of schedule today. You go back first. If anything happens, I will notify you. Yes, Xiaoping'an bowed slightly to Master Fire Crow with full courtesy, and then walked out of the door of the Horcrux Hall under Master Fire Crow's satisfied gaze. Watching Xiaoping'an leave, Master Huoyan nodded. This Longhuan is quite sensible. Since he is sensible and obedient, there is no need for him to embarrass Longhuan. If Longhuan gives up, he, the leader of the Horcrux Hall, his face is not good looking either. Manager Fu must feel that he is incapable of controlling his subordinates, cannot accommodate others, and does not have an overall view of the situation. That would be bad and would be detrimental to his development in the Wanshen sect. Xiaoping'an walked out of the director's hall and let out a long breath. In the Immortal City at this moment, because many people have been transferred to the Abyss Fortress, some people have left the Immortal City, and some people are stationed outside the city. Compared with the past, the Immortal City is a little bleak, and there are suddenly fewer people walking on the street. Almost half. Although it seems a bit inappropriate to say it, these days are the most tense times in the Immortal City, but Xiaoping'an has been having an extremely relaxed life these days. Xiaoping'an walked directly towards his residence in Tianyao Lane. It has been exactly 10 days since that day when he gathered in the Master Hall to now. During these 10 days, he has been in the Horcrux Hall, continuously helping 5 disciples of the 10,000 God sect refine Horcruxes. Of course, the so-called tiredness is actually an act. Other soul masters need to spend a lot of money to refine soul weapons. For Xiaoping'an, helping people refine soul weapons is like a doctor giving people injections. Apart from consuming a little time, there is almost no other consumption. And because of the nourishment of the bottle of white dew renewing pill and the top quality soul fixing pearl, his soul has not been consumed in the past few days, but has increased slightly. At this moment, his whole body is refreshed and his brain is full of wisdom. Other gains include 3 world beads. They are all adults. Mingtao is not the only sensible summoner in Wanshan section. Many summoners will not miss the opportunity to make friends with soul masters. Moreover, the soul weapon refined by Xiaoping'an is indeed good, at least it looks like it. No worse than Master Fire Crow. The job was indeed good, not dangerous at all. Jizu came to the door and everything was safe. Xiaoping'an estimated that even if he went out to hunt those bugs, he might not be able to get 3 rare world beads so easily in these 3 days. A man returned to number 98 Tianyao Lane and opened the door to the courtyard. The array in the courtyard was operating normally and nothing had changed. Xiaoping'an summoned the god of fortune boy and the black dragon, and made something to eat in the kitchen. After eating, he went directly to the secret room. He first threw out the tortoise-shell 5 elements reversed bag with sword array to protect the secret room, and then summoned Xuanhuan to guard the secret room. In the secret room, Xiaoping'an did not rush to fuse the 3 world beads, but directly entered the spiritual world temple in the secret mandala. It has been a long time since he entered the spirit world, especially since he advanced to the 6 Yang realm, so he just happened to go back to the spirit world to take a look. Entering the spirit realm temple and passing through the golden arch, Xiaoping'an soon arrived at the spirit realm of the immortal city. The entire spiritual world is filled with thick fog and is unpredictable. Two spiritual portals leading to different worlds stand in two directions of the spiritual world of the immortal city, facing each other far away. Xiaoping'an has not been there yet and doesn't know where the portal over there leads. However, Xiaoping'an is not in a hurry. He runs directly towards the spiritual world portal on the earth side. The spiritual world on the earth side is still there. He hasn't finished exploring yet. So far, he's still wandering around a fortress, so he'll talk about it later. Passing through the vortex of white light flashing in the middle of the arch, when the dazzling white light disappeared, Xiaoping'an had already appeared in the previous fortress. Before Xiaoping'an could see clearly the scene in front of him. Rumble. The deafening roar reached Xiaoping'an's ears, and the ground of the entire fortress was shaking, just like a person standing in front of a railroad track with a train passing by. When Xiaoping'an saw the situation clearly, he was instantly shocked. The sky of the entire fortress is protected by an energy shield. In the high altitude outside the shield, there are nightmare insects swimming everywhere. At first glance, there are hundreds of them. Just as Xiaoping'an was staring at the nightmare insects in the sky, a huge stone the size of a house, with burning flames, was like a meteor, dragging a plume of black smoke, flying from a distance, and struck again. The blast hit the fortress's energy shield and smashed into pieces, causing huge roars and vibrations. "Your Majesty, you are back." Mu Lao appeared in front of Xiaoping'an, his brilliance had dimmed by half, like a candle in the wind, and he was unable to speak. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 448. Seeing Mu Lao's appearance, Xiaoping'an grabbed Mu Lao's hand without thinking. The soul power of Xiaoping'an turned into little golden lights, falling on Mu Lao like fireflies. On his body, he was absorbed by Mu Lao. With the injection of Xiaoping'an's soul power, Mu Lao's somewhat nihilistic body regrouped, gradually gaining a bright brilliance and becoming what it was before. "Your Majesty, that's enough. I have nothing to do. Don't waste your precious soul power." After transmitting almost 2 slashes of soul power to Mr. Mu, Xiaoping'an stopped, frowned, and looked at the sky and the burning boulders that kept flying from a distance, and asked, "What's going on, what's going on?" The last time His Majesty appeared in the fortress, he killed some nightmare insects and zombies in the wilderness, and then alerted other nightmare insects and zombies around the fortress. After His Majesty left the fortress was occupied by those nightmare insects and zombies. The puppet corpses were surrounded, but fortunately the fortress can still operate normally, and the nightmare insects and puppet corpses did not attack, otherwise it would be terrible for His Majesty to come back this time. Mr. Mu said calmly. "The fortress is already surrounded." "Yeah," Mu Lao nodded. "Let's go and have a look." "Your Majesty, please come with me." Mu Lao's figure floated in the fortress, and he led Xiaoping'an directly towards the tower of the fortress. After a while, Xiaoping'an came to the tower of the fortress and finally saw clearly the situation outside the fortress. The entire fortress is in a huge energy shield, and on the plain 5 or 6 kilometers away from the fortress, there are thousands of ugly green-skinned zombies wandering on the plain. There are thousands of green-skinned zombies and various puppet corpses gathered together to form a large and somewhat chaotic barracks. In addition to the green-skinned zombies, Xiaoping'an also saw hundreds of giant nightmare insects flying in the wilderness above the barracks. What surprised Xiaoping'an even more was that he also saw several human-like creatures in the barracks. Monsters. Those human-like monsters wear black armor, have hands and feet, and walk upright. Those monsters have a layer of scales on their heads, faces and bodies, and there are tails behind them. Those monster-like things surrounded by the nightmare insects and those puppet corpses, pointing at the fortress, they were in the center of the camp. In that military camp, there was a metal giant 100 meters tall, throwing huge burning stones towards the fortress. The metal giant was so shocking. A layer of slightly rusty metallic luster flashed all over his body. The giant bent down and grabbed a hand on the ground, and he could grab a house-sized stone or soil from the ground. The giant's, as soon as it clenches its hand, the thing it is holding will burn, and then it will throw it violently, as if it is releasing burning meteors, with unparalleled power. A monster stood on the head of the metal giant, seeming to be directing the metal giant's actions. The energy shield of the fortress is single viewing, just like that special frosted glass. People in the fortress can see the situation outside through the energy passport, but people outside can't see clearly what's going on in the fortress. Xiaopinggan and Mulao climbed up to the fortress wall, but those outside were still unaware of anything different inside the fortress. What are those human-like monsters, and where did they find the metal giant? Xiaopinggan asked. Your Majesty, those human-like monsters you are talking about are nightmare insects. Ah, what, those monsters are nightmare insects? Xiaopinggan looked surprised. Yes, they are evolved from nightmare insects. The higher the level of nightmare insects, the more human-like they will evolve, Mr. Mew explained. That metal giant was formerly the Flame King Kong of the fortress. Fire King Kong. Well, yes, the Flame King is extremely powerful and can also cast fire spells. He can be regarded as the guard of the fortress. But later, due to the great changes in the fortress, the Flame King went outside to surround the nightmare insects and zombies, and fell outside. The core soul, the stone, was contaminated by demonic energy, so it was controlled by those nightmare insects. Xiaopinggan looked at the puppet corpses and nightmare insects outside the fortress and licked his lips. These things were naturally a threat to the fortress, but to him, they were like walking soul power and tonics. As long as they could attack if you kill him, your soul power will definitely increase dramatically, and you should be able to advance to the intermediate pastoral level. However, it is difficult to deal with so many nightmare insects and puppet corpses gathered together. There is also the seemingly invincible Flame King Kong, so we must find a way. Can you find a way to control that Flame King? Xiaopinggan asked Mulao. Mr. Mew was silent for a moment. Unless the soul stone of the flame diamond is purified again and the demonic energy in the soul stone of the flame diamond is driven out, the only way to purify the soul stone of the flame diamond is to re-infuse the soul stone of the flame diamond with clarity. Clean soul power. Is my current soul power enough to purify the Flame King's soul stone? Mr. Mew had already guessed what Xiaopinggan wanted to do. He shook his head. I'm not sure, and I don't know to what extent the Flame King's soul stone has been contaminated, so I can't determine the soul power required to purify the soul stone. Where is the soul stone of the Flame King? It's on his head, in the middle of his eyebrows, that raised eye-like place. Your Majesty, I know what you want to do. This is too risky. In this case, if we don't take risks, we can only be beaten passively. More and more nightmare insects and zombies may gather around the fortress, and the defense force of the fortress may one day collapse. If the fortress collapses, I can retreat. What will you do? Therefore, you still have to take necessary risks. I already have a plan in mind, you just need to cooperate with me. At this time, Xiaopinggan showed his domineering side and made up his mind. It will never waver. Mulao is also a very straightforward and courageous person. When Xiaopinggan said this, Mulao glanced at Xiaopinggan with admiration and relief. Only such people can shoulder the important task of revitalizing the spiritual world. Mulao instantly he made up his mind, if your Majesty is not afraid of danger, I have a solution here. Tell me the story. Waiting for a few hours, after it gets dark here, those spiritual bodies in the sky will appear, the Flame King Kong will stop, and those nightmare insects will also absorb the energy of the spiritual bodies. When the time comes, I will have 2 stone statues guarding me. Rushing out of the fortress to attack and attract the attention of the puppet corpses and nightmare insects, His Majesty took the opportunity to approach the Flame King Kong, rushed into the camp of the puppet corpses and nightmare insects, completed the purification of the Flame Diamond Soul Stone, and grasped it first with the Flame King Kong. We have a slight chance of victory. Haha, this plan is exactly what I thought. It's just that your Majesty entered the enemy camp alone. There are dangers everywhere. If you are not careful, you will be surrounded and your life will be in danger. Those evolved nightmare insects are more difficult to deal with than ordinary nightmare insects. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 449. The boulders thrown by the Flame King still hit the fortress's protective cover like bolides. Each time, the ground of the entire fortress shook slightly. Xiaoping'an waited quietly in the fortress. Except for the Flame King Kong, the other puppet corpses and nightmare insects were unable to attack the fortress and did not dare to get too close. They seemed to be numb to such attacks. Most of the puppet corpses gathered in the military camp. Others wandered around the fortress and surrounded it. A few hours later, the sky in the spiritual world gradually dimmed. After waiting for a while, a little starlight appeared in the sky. Those starlights are all human spirit bodies that have entered the spiritual world. As the sky darkened and the spirits appeared, the low-level nightmare insects that had been entrenched above the fortress and in the barracks began to swim towards the stars that appeared in the sky. The Flame King Kong, the frequency of attack slowly slowed down and then stopped. By the time the stars appeared in the sky, there were no longer those low-level nightmare insects around the fortress. Only the puppet corpses and human-like monster nightmare insects were entrenched near the barracks. They even lit a bonfire. Looking from a distance, the barracks was lively and relaxed, and the screams of the green-skinned zombies echoed in the wilderness and could be heard far away. The huge Flame King Kong still stood in the barracks, motionless, leaving only a huge black shadow in the wilderness. Xiaoping'an is ready. Your Majesty, I will make the protective shield of the fortress disappear briefly later. At the same time, I will send 2 stone guards from the main entrance of the fortress to rush out of the fortress. When the protective shield of the fortress disappears, your Majesty can rush out from the side of the fortress and hide. Control your body shape and approach the barracks from the side. The stone statue guards will try to attract the attention of the puppet corpses and nightmare insects. However, it is just a matter of chance. If His Majesty's whereabouts are leaked before approaching the barracks, or he is surrounded in the barracks, nothing can be done. Your Majesty, please evacuate quickly, Mr. Mu said to Xiaoping'an. Okay, I get it, Xiaoping'an nodded. Get ready. After saying that, Xiaoping'an slipped from the tower of the fortress and ran towards the side of the fortress. 4 or 5 kilometers ahead, after deviating from the gaze direction of the puppets and monsters in the military camp, Xiaoping'an stopped near the fortress's protective shield, prostrate on the ground, and then waited for the fortress's energy shield to disappear. After just waiting for a few minutes, the fortress protective shield in front of him disappeared in an instant. The moment the protective shield disappeared, Xiaoping'an did not stand up, but rolled out of the protective area of the fortress. In the distance, directly opposite the fortress, at the moment when the protective shield disappeared, 2 stone guards with red eyes rushed out of the protective shield and rushed toward the distant barracks with meteoric strides. The protective shield of the fortress was too conspicuous, especially at night, so as soon as the protective shield disappeared, the zombies and monsters who were wandering and doing nothing in the opposite barracks immediately discovered the abnormality of the fortress, and at the same time saw the 2 men who rushed out of the fortress. A stone guardian. Zhizi. The green-skinned zombie monsters shouted and rushed towards the 2 stone statue guards. The 2 sides soon collided in the wilderness between the fortress and the barracks. A fierce battle breaks out instantly. The stone guard strode forward, waving the flails and heavy swords in his hands, and in the blink of an eye, he blasted several green-skinned zombies rushing in front into a pulp. Those zombies that came in front of the stone statue guards, especially the green-skinned puppet corpses, were no match for the stone statue guards. The stone statue guards waved their weapons and swept the green-skinned puppet corpses flying one by one. The green-skinned puppet corpse was even lifted up by the stone statue guard and stepped heavily on it, causing it to explode. Once those puppet corpses died, the remaining soul power in their bodies was like dots of fireflies floating in the wilderness. In the blink of an eye, they were devoured by other green-skinned zombies. The stone guardians of the fortress did not seem to be able to kill them like the shepherds. Those puppet corpses directly absorbed soul power. In order to devour the soul power of their companions, some green-skinned zombies even tore each other apart, causing quite a bit of chaos. Two monster-like high-level nightmare insects flew over behind the puppet corpse. They roared and pointed at the two stone statue guards. The ground in the wilderness suddenly turned into a large area of quicksand. The stone guard was suddenly trapped by the quicksand, and most of his feet were sunk into the quicksand. He was unable to break free and was completely trapped. As those puppet corpses rushed up, the stone statue guards trapped in the quicksand continued to wave their weapons, killing the puppet corpses that rushed over. However, the more the stone statue guards moved, the more their bodies sank into the quicksand. Slowly, yes, the quicksand has sunk into the waist of the stone guard. A large group of zombies rushed over and gradually swamped the two stone statue guards. At the same time, Xiaopingan was running wildly in the wilderness. He hid in the gray mist and rushed towards the barracks from the side, using the fastest speed. All the puppet corpses and the nightmare insect monsters in the wilderness were attracted by the two stone statue guards, so they did not notice it at all, and they did not expect that Xiaopingan would raid the barracks from the side. When the stone statue guards were overwhelmed by the puppet corpses, Xiaopingan was already close to the edge of the barracks. The huge flaming King Kong stood in front of him like a towering mountain peak or a skyscraper, standing steadily in the barracks, no longer visible. That scary atmosphere in the daytime. The barracks were extremely crude. Fences and walls were built around the barracks with branches and stones. There were pits and holes everywhere on the ground in the barracks. Those pits and holes were dug out by some of the green-skinned zombies. A hiding place. Xiaopingan rushed to the feet of the Flame King. Two green-skinned zombies suddenly came out from the side and stood in front of Xiaopingan. The two green-skinned zombies did not expect that anyone would rush into the barracks. His eyes were so wide open that he was about to shout. This time, there is no escape. Xiaopingan accelerated violently, without saying a word, and slashed out the flying sword in his hand, and chopped off the heads of the two green-skinned zombies with one strike. Before the two flying heads rolled to the ground, and before the soul power flying out of the two puppet corpses merged into his own body, Xiaopingan had already leapt up, his feet a few meters away from the Flame King Kong. A little above the instep of the tall Bigfoot, the whole person used his hands and feet together, and used the fastest speed to climb quickly along the calf, thigh, and torso of the Flame King Kong towards the head of the Flame King Kong, and rushed towards it. The body of the Flame King Kong is not completely radiant, but has a complex metal block structure with a few gaps, which can just be used to draw strength. In less than a minute, Xiaopingan rushed to the top of the Flame King's head, stepped on the Flame King's nose with his feet, and stood between the Flame King's eyes. Following the instructions given by Mu Lao, Xiaopingan pressed his hand between the center of Flame King Kong's eyebrows. A metal block at the center of Flame King Kong's eyebrows suddenly slid away from the side, revealing the soul stone inside. The Flame King's soul stone is about the size of a pumpkin and is a hexagonal snow-white crystal. At this moment, there is a trace of black mist entwined in the soul stone. Xiaopingan pressed down on the soul stone, gritted his teeth, and frantically injected his soul power into the Flame King's soul stone. It was not until this moment that the two golden light spots in the air slowly flew up from below, and were absorbed by Xiaopingan. They were the soul power of the two green-skinned zombies just now. At this moment, in the wilderness in the distance, Xiaoping'an saw the necks of the two stone statue guards submerged in the quicksand. The corpse pierced the top of its head with spikes. With a bang, the whole body was turned into pieces and scattered, and it was killed. Suddenly, a green-skinned zombie below in the barracks pointed at the head of Flame King Kong and screamed, and the harsh and sharp screams resounded throughout the whole place. Xiaoping'an was discovered. The entire military camp was suddenly alarmed, and even the puppet corpses and nightmare insect monsters in the distant wilderness suddenly turned their heads and looked towards the Flame King Kong. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 soul power was input into the soul stone of the Flame King Kong. The soul stone of the Flame King Kong emitted a bright white light like an incandescent lamp. The white light suddenly illuminated Xiaoping'an's figure high in the sky. Every detail was revealed, and under the impact of Xiaoping'an's soul power, the black energy in the soul stone became much lighter like ink marks impacted by clear running water. Xiaoping'an could even see with the naked eye some black energy being squeezed out of the soul stone and dissipating into smoke. Roar! There was a roar in the airs, and a nightmare insect monster flew directly into the air from the military camp. The nightmare insect monster was furious, staring at Xiaoping'an with blood-red eyes, and pointed at Xiaoping'an, and in the void, all of a sudden hundreds of arrows condensed and appeared in the void, and shot fiercely towards Xiaoping'an. At this time, if Xiaoping'an gave up using his soul power on the Flame King's soul stone, he would be able to avoid it immediately. But after taking a look at the soul stone, Xiaoping'an gritted his teeth, grabbed the soul stone with one hand, and continued to output his soul power into the soul stone. He held the Fei Mang sword in his other hand and moved dancing in front of him. The sword light of the flying sword turned into a screen, and with the sound of a series of jingling secret techniques, he directly cut down hundreds of arrows shot by the nightmare insect monster. One of Xiaoping'an's hands was numb from the shock. Only then did he realize that the arrows shot by the nightmare insect monster were completely condensed out of thin air, and they were real, not just magic. The arrows chopped down by his flying light clattered directly from high in the sky. Fell down. Seeing that this move did not force Xiaoping'an away, and Xiaoping'an was still frantically outputting soul power at the Flame King's soul stone, the nightmare insect monster suddenly became anxious, and roared in the void, its entire body. It suddenly transformed into a huge fiery red nightmare insect that was dozens of meters long. It opened its huge mouth directly, revealing a mouthful of ferocious sharp teeth, and rushed towards Xiaoping'an, as if it wanted to open its huge mouth to devour Xiaoping'an. Nightmare Slaying Sword. The flying long sword in Xiaoping'an's hand turned into a blue light, suddenly became 10 times larger, and protected Xiaoping'an in front of him, slashing towards the head bitten by the nightmare insect. The nightmare insect raised its head and whipped its tail toward the nightmare slayer sword, colliding in front of Xiaoping'an with a bang. The fiery red nightmare insect flew out upside down, its tail dripping with blood, and many scales fell from the air. Xiaoping'an's nightmare-slaying sword had been defused by the nightmare insect. Not only that, it flew from Xiaoping'an's hand. The flying sword that went out was still tightly grabbed by the two claws of the nightmare insect. The sword's body trembled and struggled, but it could not fly back. Xiaoping'an's expression changed. At this time, several other nightmare insect monsters had quickly flown over. "Your Majesty, retreat quickly." Mr. Mew's nervous roar came from the direction of Sci-fi. The protective cover of the fortress disappeared again. This time, hundreds of stone statue guards rushed out of the fortress, and Mew Lao couldn't care about those many anymore. Mr. Mew stood on the tower of the fortress, nervously watching the battle situation here. When Xiaoping'an was discovered by the first nightmare insect monster, the battle situation had taken a turn for the worse, which was very unfavorable to Xiaoping'an. Those evolved nightmare insect monsters, every time they are all very powerful, not inferior to Xiaoping'an at all. What's more, Xiaoping'an is still holding the soul stone of the Flame King in one hand. While outputting soul power to the soul stone of the Flame King, he also has to fight with those evolved ones. Nightmare bug monster fights. The number of nightmare insect monsters that rushed over suddenly reached 4. Xiaopinggan was completely surrounded, and he also lost the Fei Mang sword in his hand. The situation is at stake. Xiaopinggan glanced at the soul stone. The black energy in the soul stone became lighter. He gritted his teeth and frantically input his soul power, but would not withdraw. A ferocious nightmare insect monster suddenly appeared in front of Xiaopinggan. With a wave of his hand, a dark spear appeared in his hand. The spear directly stabbed Xiaopinggan's heart fiercely. Xiaopinggan grabbed the head of the gun with one hand, twisted it with one hand, and broke the barrel of the gun. The gun barrel that had lost its head was still sharp, but it was tilted in the direction and struck hard on Xiaopinggan's right shoulder. The gun barrel penetrated Xiaopinggan's shoulder and hit the nose of the flaming King Kong behind Xiaopinggan with a bang. The blood on Xiaopinggan's body was directly sprinkled on the head and face of the Flame King Kong, and poured on the soul stone of the Flame King Kong. The Flame King remained motionless, but Xiaopinggan felt the breath of death again. Death was close at hand, and the tongue of death had turned into scorching flames and licked his side, and the clothes and hair on his body began to burn. That was the third nightmare insect monster. This nightmare insect monster directly burned itself with terrifying flames and rushed towards Xiaopinggan, trying to wrap up Xiaopinggan and turn Xiaopinggan into ashes. Your mother. Xiaopinggan also became fierce, and a stubborn and fierce spirit surged out of his heart. Looking at the third nightmare insect monster that rushed forward, Xiaopinggan did not retreat even half a step. While pushing himself, the soul power in his body continued to be poured into the soul stone of the Flame King. While holding half of the spear head in his hand, he stabbed the head of the nightmare insect monster that looked like it had walked out of a steel furnace. Past. Xiaopinggan's entire arm was on fire, but the gun tip still stabbed into the head of the nightmare insect monster. At the same time, the nightmare insect monster also rushed over without fear of death and surrounded Xiaopinggan. The entire Flame King Kong's head, at this moment, was burning like a torch on a high tower in the wilderness, lighting up the entire night sky. Seeing this scene, Mr. Mew on the fortress wall felt a chill in his heart. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 450. The head of the Flame King was wrapped in scorching flames, burning. For Mr. Mew, 1 second seemed like 10,000 years. Just more than 10 seconds later, the burning nightmare insect monster flew away, and there was no trace of Xiaopinggan at the head of the Flame King. The flying nightmare insect monster stumbled, and the half-cut gun in Xiaopinggan's hand was inserted through the head. The head had been seriously injured, and it almost fell from the sky. It staggered to the ground. On one finger of the Flame King Kong, the metal gun head was inserted into the head of the nightmare bug monster. Under the fire just now, the metal gun head had melted, turning into blood-red iron juice and falling from the air. The zombies around the barracks began to cheer. Hundreds of nightmare insects flew down from the sky, and all the nightmare insect monsters rushed to the vicinity of the Flame King Kong, flying and circling in the sky. The battle with Xiaopinggan just now, although short, was dangerous and fierce every second. The battle also attracted the nightmare insects that had flown into the sky again. The stone puppets that had just rushed out of the fortress had stopped and were waiting for Mr. Mew's order. Mew Lao's heart trembled, because the last scene he just saw was Xiaopinggan's entire body disappearing in the flames. Was it burned to ashes? Wrong. Mew Lao's eyes suddenly fell on the position between the Flame King's eyebrows. That position was completely closed at this moment. The soul stone of the Flame King was no longer visible. It was hidden again and submerged into the Flame King's brain, and the Flame King's eyebrows were completely closed. Part of the body, a mysterious flaming rune appeared vaguely. Could it be that a possibility suddenly occurred to Mr. Mew? The Flame King Kong standing on the wasteland was motionless at the moment, like a silent mountain. Just as the puppet corpses and nightmare insects were cheering, The eyes of the silent Flame King flickered slightly, and a finger trembled slightly. Xiaopinggan thought he was dead and burned to ashes, but after a short period of darkness, he opened his eyes again and saw countless corpses cheering on the ground. In front of him, hundreds of nightmares were swirling around. Insects, and nightmare insect monsters. These originally ferocious and ugly monsters have become smaller at this moment, as insignificant as flies and toys. The nightmare bug monster that he stabbed in the head with the spear tip is now resting on the finger of his right hand, eating something, as if it is healing the wound. The wound on the nightmare bug monster's head is getting smaller. The fortress in the distance didn't seem that tall anymore. Xiaopinggan could even easily see Mulao standing on the wall of the fortress at a glance. Mulao had a surprised look on his face and was looking at where he was. A group of stone statue guards stood in the wilderness, dumbly like pawns on a chessboard, extremely cute. Everything around has changed, it is all so small and fragile. Those things that were dangerous and powerful before have a ridiculous meaning. Some information flows flashed through his brain, and those information flows merged with Xiaopinggan's consciousness. Then, Xiaopinggan discovered that he seemed to have become the Flame King Kong at this moment, with his own perspective, his own body, and his own the feeling seems to be integrated with the Flame King Kong. What happened? Xiaopinggan was briefly confused for a few seconds. Then, he found that the puppet corpses and nightmare insects around his body seemed to be looking towards him, and he seemed to notice that the fingers of the Flame King were trembling, and there was a light rising in his eyes. The puppet corpses on the ground raised their heads and looked at themselves in shock, while the nightmare insects and nightmare insect monsters around them seemed to be alarmed, and several nightmare insects flying close to them seemed to be disturbed. Something startled, and it quickly retreated and flew away, putting a little distance away from itself. The nightmare insect monster that stayed on his finger also raised its head, as if it felt something, and wanted to fly away. These bugs. How could Xiaopinggan let the nightmare insect monster fly away? He just moved his fingers and pinched it with 2 fingers. The nightmare insect monster was pinched like a small insect by a huge warrior wearing metal armor and metal gloves. It's like living there, completely unable to move. Xiaopinggan raised his hand and held the nightmare insect monster in front of his eyes. The perspective was different, and everything changed. In Xiaopinggan's eyes, the ferocious insect monster just now looked as humble and insignificant as a caterpillar. Its entire body was not as big as the knuckles of one of his own fingers. The nightmare insect monster struggled hard, and that was the power of struggle, as weak as a goshawk. Then, the body of the nightmare insect monster burned again, releasing blazing flames and high temperatures. Xiaopinggan also felt to him, the heat on the body of the nightmare bug monster was like wearing gloves to touch a thermos that had just been filled with hot water. It was more like picking up the ashes from a burning brazier. A small piece of black charcoal that is still warm. Xiaopinggan's 2 fingers exerted a slight force, like crushing a ball of sand soaked in water. Bump! The nightmare insect monster exploded between his fingers, and his entire body was reduced to rubbish, with all the flesh, blood, and bones reduced to dregs in the blink of an eye. This nightmare insect monster was awesome just now, but now it doesn't look that good. It's too inexperienced. A bit of golden light flew up from the body of the nightmare insect monster, and suddenly fell into the center of his eyebrows. Soul power. A sudden increase in soul power. Cool. Xiaopinggan suddenly became energetic. The surge in soul power made Xiaopinggan immersed in an extremely pleasurable experience. That kind of feeling cannot be described in one word, it is like becoming an immortal and making people feel happy. Addicted. The crushed insect monster finally frightened the nightmare insects flying in the air and flew away. A large group of zombies on the ground also screamed and wanted to run away. Xiaopinggan lifted up the big foot, stepped on the ground without hesitation. Rumble. As the earth shook and the mountains shook, one of Xiaopinggan's big feet fell. Because he couldn't control his strength, Xiaoping's foot directly dug out a large area of several thousand square meters deep on the place name. There were hundreds of puppet corpses under his feet in a huge pit of more than 10 meters. They all turned into dregs without saying a word. This foot stepped too deep, causing Xiaoping to stumble, with one foot lower and one higher, and he almost knelt down, but fortunately, his body was unusually flexible and he stabilized immediately. Countless light spots flew up from the solace of his feet, sinking into his eyebrows little by little. It's soul power again. Although the soul power of a single puppet corpse is not much, and cannot compare with the nightmare insects and nightmare insect monsters, but there are so many puppet corpses that they can't bear it. As soon as the soul power of hundreds of puppet corpses disappears between his eyebrows, Xiaoping feels that his soul is, the strength increased sharply again. Xiaoping looked down and saw that the puppet corpses in the entire barracks began to run away in fear. How could Xiaoping let these cute little puppet corpses escape from under his nose? He quickly lifted the foot that was stuck in the pit. When the foot landed, he took dozens of puppet corpses away again. He was trampled to pieces, turned into soul power and sank into the center of his eyebrows. He stepped out with his second foot again, heading towards the place where the number of puppet corpses was the largest and densest. This time, the strength was controlled very appropriately. When he stepped down, his big foot only penetrated the ground for a few meters. The ground trembled, and hundreds of puppet corpses turned into dregs again, turning into countless light spots of soul power towards Xiaoping. His brows came to him. This efficiency is too high. Xiaoping almost wanted to grin. There were several annoying little black dots flying around his head in front of his eyes, which were several other nightmare insect monsters. A nightmare insect monster was flying in the air. With a wave of his hand, countless burning arrows and flames flew towards Xiaoping's head. They all hit Xiaoping's head at once. In terms of safety, it was like some warm sand that had been sunbaked by the sun in the blowing wind. It was useless, and it was impossible to hurt him at all. There was also a nightmare insect monster that was even more annoying. It flew back and forth directly between Xiaoping's eyebrows, stood on Xiaoping's head, and actually wanted to move the metal block outside Xiaoping's eyebrow soul stone. How can it be? Damn it, this little bug actually bites on your nose and face. Xiaoping was angry, and his whole head suddenly burned with blazing flames. The color of the flame was snow white, with a hint of blue light, and the temperature was terrifyingly high. It was completely different from the flames on the nightmare insect monster. They were not on the same level. The nightmare insect monster that flew to Xiaoping's eyebrows only had time to scream in the flames before it was burned to ashes and fell from the air, and its soul power was lost again. Xiaoping was absorbed by Xiaoping between his eyebrows. Xiaoping's left hand suddenly grabbed out, causing a strong wind in the air. The nightmare insect monster that had just shot countless flaming arrows wanted to run away, but was unable to move faster than Xiaoping's left hand. The nightmare insect monster caught it, and with a slight exertion on his hand, the nightmare insect monster was crushed to pieces. The soul power of the nightmare insect monster surged towards Xiaoping's eyebrows again. Xiaoping's right hand was not idle, and he grabbed the sky beside him. Before 3 or 4 nightmare insects could run away, Xiaoping grabbed them and crushed them to pieces. The soul power of the crushed nightmare insect also surged towards Xiaoping. In the barracks on the ground, Xiaoping directly raised his big foot and stepped on the fleeing corpses on the ground. There was no way, there were too many corpses in the barracks, and they were very concentrated. Xiaoping stepped on them, and the ground shook. Thousands of square meters of ground collapsed. Every time he stepped on them, as many as dozens, sometimes hundreds, of puppet corpses were reduced to rubbish in an instant, and any resistance was a joke. The huge barracks, under Xiaoping's feet, looked like something a child had built to play house on the beach. After a few feet, it was in a mess. The mask was completely gone, and the original appearance could not be seen at all. Those who had been hidden in the barracks before the greenskin zombies in the cave were suddenly destroyed. They were reduced to dregs before they even knew what happened, and they contributed their soul power to Xiaopingen without any reservation. No nightmare insect monster, no nightmare insect, and no puppet corpse could have imagined that the Flame King Kong standing in the barracks would kill them in the blink of an eye. Once a body like the Flame King Kong erupts in such a densely populated place, it will be too terrifying. It is like a whale rushing into a school of shrimps. It can swallow countless creatures with just one mouth. Xiaopingen's hands kept grabbing and waving in the air. One by one, the nightmare insects were caught by Xiaopingen's hands and exploded as soon as they were squeezed. There was no resistance at all, because the strength of the two parties was not of the same level. Seeing that the situation with the Flame King Kong was completely out of control and was completely wrong, the few remaining nightmare insect monsters saw that nothing could be done and were about to run away. One by one, the nightmare insect monsters turned into brilliance and turned around to fly away into the distance. Go. The opportunity in front of him was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Xiaopingen was enjoying absorbing the soul power. How could he let those nightmare insect monsters slip away from under his nose? After just a short period of familiarity, Xiaopingen became more and more comfortable with the body of the Flame King. Xiaopingen stretched out his hand to catch a nightmare insect monster, but failed to catch it. He felt anxious, and something suddenly popped up in his head, which was the secret method of the Flame King. Looking at several nightmare insect monsters that had flown 1,000 meters away, Xiaopingen stretched out his fist and waved, and a ball of blazing white flames flew out of his hand like a meteor, making it even more powerful than the nightmare insect monsters. With such fast speed, he caught up with the nightmare insect monster in the blink of an eye and hit the nightmare insect monster with a bang. In the blink of an eye, it turned into gray and fell from the sky. The soul power of the nightmare insect monster turned into a bit of golden light and flew towards Xiaopingen. As Xiaopingen's hands were flying, flaming meteors continued to fly out from his hands. Those nightmare insect monsters that had flown far away had already flown 7,000 or 8,000 meters away, but they were also caught by the flames in the blink of an eye. Meteor catches up. No matter how those nightmare insect monsters change their shapes and flight trajectories in the air, and no matter what secret techniques they use to hit the flaming meteor still catches up with their figures as easily as ever, and lifts their figures in the air. Reduced to ashes. Not a single nightmare insect monster ran away, and those that tried to escape were all reduced to dregs and ashes in the flaming meteors. Powerful. Too strong. This is how Xiaopingen feels about this Flame King's body. The soul stone of this Flame King Kong was contaminated by demonic energy before, leaving only the simplest instincts to attack the fortress, but it also brought huge shock and damage to the fortress. In fact, the ability of this Flame King Kong is far more than that. After all the nightmare insect monsters were eliminated, the entire barracks was completely unrecognizable, and all the puppet corpses were scattered in the wilderness. Several mysterious runes and halos of light flashed on Xiaopingen's feet. He stamped his feet violently, and slammed a big foot down to the ground. This step is completely different from the previous step. A ripple spread rapidly from the ground, and the ground undulated like waves. In that undulation, the ground within a radius of 10,000 meters. Sharp thorns emerged from the ground, and amidst the screams of the puppet corpses, they stabbed all the fleeing puppet corpses to pieces. With just this move, almost all the escaping puppet corpses, numbering in the thousands, were almost wiped out. The next second, a flaming longsword appeared in Xiaopingen's hand. The longsword was more than 100 meters long. He waved the longsword in the air, and more than 10 nightmare insects were directly chopped into ashes from the air. Falling down. The nightmare insects also began to scatter in all directions like frightened birds. The flaming sword flew out from Xiaopingen's hand and turned into a nightmare-slaying sword. It opened and closed in the air, like a frightening dragon, like lightning, chasing and killing those nightmare insects. Xiaoping's whole body burned with white flames. He waved his fists, and balls of fire meteors flew out of his hands, catching up with the nightmare insects and turning them into ashes. There were some nightmare insects that were absorbing the star spirits in the sky before, but the Flame King summoned the star spirits down and crushed them easily. Wherever the Flame King sees it, I am invincible, and all monsters, demons, and ghosts are all killed by the Flame King. Xiaoping was eager to kill, striding across the wilderness, chasing the fleeing nightmare insects, and headed towards the place where the brightest galaxy in the sky was. Mulao stood on top of the fortress and stared blankly at the scene in the distant wilderness. The huge Flame King Kong was like a god of war and a giant guarding the wilderness and the sky. The Flame King Kong was flashing with blazing white fire. Two huge wings formed behind the Flame King, like angels, burning the entire wilderness and the sky into a bright light. The Flame King held a flaming sword, and the nightmare insects fell like ashes. From time to time, little bits of golden light of soul power melted from all directions. It converged into the center of the Flame King's eyebrows. He's back, the shepherd is really back. Mr. Shepherd murmured to himself, so excited that he couldn't help himself. The tears he shed turned into dots of brilliance and dissipated on the towers of the fortress. There is another update today.